Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
I thought betrayal would smell like perfume and cheap whiskey. Turns out it smells like stale coffee and a child's bedtime blanket I'll never tuck in again. 2 years. 2 years of lies, stolen moments, and a man I shook hands with at dinner sitting in my seat when I wasn't looking. And now, I have proof. They think I'll break, that I'll drown in this. But I'm an engineer. I don't drown, I rebuild. And when I'm done, the only thing left of them will be dust. Before we dive into the full story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this tale, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Clayton Reed never used to pay much attention to the way morning light crept across his bathroom floor. Yet on this particular Monday, he found himself standing quietly at the doorway, squinting at a tiny silver glint near the base of the sink. The house was still. His wife, Valerie, hadn't left yet, but she was busy in the kitchen, and the kids were struggling through the final moments of their cartoon show before school. Clayton could hear Jake's cheerful humming in the living room, Emma bossily telling him not to stand so close to the TV. All so normal. But that sliver on the tile wasn't normal. It was bright enough to catch his eye, and the fact he noticed it at all was a testament to the near-obsessive neatness that came with his job. As a structural engineer, details were his life. Hairline fractures, tiny misalignments, minuscule lapses in a blueprint. These were the things that kept him awake at night. And now, a piece of foil, no bigger than a fingernail, was commanding his attention. He stepped closer and crouched, bare feet pressing into the cool floor. He picked it up carefully. Birth control pill foil? That was his first guess. Clayton's eyes narrowed, an uneasy pulse knocking in his chest. He had undergone a vasectomy 2 years before, right after Jake's birth. The memory was vivid, the nurse's reassuring chatter, Valerie's gentle coaxing that 2 kids are more than enough for us, and his own agreement that yes, Emma and Jake completed their family. There was no reason to question that decision until now. If he was fixed, why would Valerie be taking these pills? If she'd had some hormonal condition, he would have known she shared every little complaint, or so he believed. He tucked the foil in his palm and walked out to the hall, trying to keep his expression neutral. In the kitchen, Valerie was pouring cereal into bowls, scooting them toward the kids who had finally shuffled in for breakfast. She wore a loose blouse and pencil skirt, her hair neatly tied into a low bun, busy, sophisticated, thoroughly at home in her environment like the perfect wife and mother. Clayton cleared his throat. "Hey, Val, did something fall on the bathroom floor this morning? Looked like a piece of foil or something." She turned, eyebrows rising. "Foil? I don't think so, hun." She offered him a quick, dismissive smile and returned her focus to Emma, who was whining about too much milk in her cereal. The speed of her answer, the easy confidence in her voice, it set off an alarm in his head. She wasn't searching her memory. There was no pause of confusion. It felt rehearsed. "You sure?" he pressed, leaning on the counter. Valerie shrugged, barely glancing his way. "No idea, Clay. Maybe it was from the kids' vitamins or something." Then she was back to motherly tasks, wiping Jake's sticky chin, sweeping a few stray cereal flakes off the countertop, and herding them to get their shoes. He said nothing more. He simply clenched the foil inside his hand, his mind spinning 1,000 possibilities and none of them good. The rest of the morning passed in a haze. Clayton methodically got dressed for work, kissed the kids goodbye, but took an extra second in the doorway to watch Valerie. She was a petite woman, not more than 5'5", but she carried herself with the poise of someone always on top of her game. It was one of the things that had drawn him to her, her ability to navigate social events, corporate parties, and everyday family life with effortless grace. Now, though, a question hammered inside him. What is she hiding? He recalled the vasectomy conversation. At the time, Valerie had seemed so genuine concerned about birth control side effects on her body, appreciative that he'd make a medical choice that would keep them from accidents. Clayton had agreed wholeheartedly. They had 2 children, which they both adored, so it made sense. But if that was the truth, Why the pill foil now? As he stepped outside, the crisp autumn air whipped across the driveway. He looked over his shoulder at their modest suburban home, feeling a strange dissonance. A home was supposed to be a place of stability, a fortress of trust. He never suspected anything that would shake that foundation. Not once in 8 years of marriage. Yet here he was, slipping the foil into the glove compartment of his car like contraband evidence. He couldn't muster the courage to throw it away, and he sure as hell wasn't going to confront Valerie without more information. Clayton believed in logic and thoroughness. He believed in facts. He climbed into the driver's seat and let the engine idle for a moment, phone in hand, almost tempted to type, "Found birth control pill, but wife is cheating," into a search engine. He felt ridiculous for even having the thought, so he slipped his phone back into his pocket. He'd approach this the way he would handle an engineering anomaly. Gather data, run tests, interpret results. But deep down, a cold dread told him that any real data would only confirm the worst. The drive to his office was a blur. He replayed details from the last few months. Valerie staying late at work more often. Phone calls she took in the other room. Her mild annoyance whenever he asked about her day. At the time, he dismissed it as normal stress or just her needing space. People changed over time. He was no stranger to that idea. He parked outside the sleek glass building where his engineering firm was headquartered. The sign read, RCW Structural Solutions. He co-owned the business with 2 partners, Randall and Charles, though as the lead engineer, Clayton sometimes found the business side draining. He was more comfortable analyzing data or double-checking designs, but business or not, it was a stable job with decent returns. More than enough to keep Valerie and the kids comfortable. Inside, the receptionist, Heidi, an amiable woman in her mid-20s, smiled as he entered. "Morning, Mr. Reed. You're in early." Clayton forced a polite nod. "Yeah, thought I'd get a head start." He strode past her, heading to his private office. He didn't feel like chatting. The unusual sense of betrayal or suspicion had set his nerves on edge. He hated carrying that negativity into the workplace, but he couldn't help it. Behind closed doors, he logged into his computer, trying to focus on project updates. A new municipal building design needed final checks, plus one of their biggest clients required a briefing this afternoon. Normally, he'd sink into these tasks, letting the comfort of rational figures and structural tolerances drown out personal drama. But every time he glanced at his desk phone or personal cell, he half expected it to ring with some bombshell. A hospital calling about a sick wife, the bank calling about a secret account, Valerie calling to confess. Get it together, man. He inhaled deeply, stared at the blueprint on his screen, and forced himself to concentrate. At noon, he took an early lunch, mostly because the tension in his body was giving him a headache. Wandering down to the corner cafe, he ordered black coffee and a sandwich, ignoring the pastries that usually tempted him. He sat by the window, the paper bag in front of him untouched. His mind refused to let go of that piece of foil. He tried replaying how it might have gotten there. The kids rummaging through some old medicine drawer, Valerie's leftover stash from years ago. But, ironically, the brand name he recognized was a current brand. He was no gynecologist. But he definitely knew that modern pill packaging didn't look like it did years ago. It was a newer variety, from the subtle labeling on that foil circle. He typed a quick note in his phone, "Locate pill packaging at home." Then he typed, "Possible conversation with doctor?" A part of him wanted to find any explanation other than infidelity. Maybe the vasectomy hadn't been 100% guaranteed. Maybe she had weird hormonal imbalances, but why hide it? That was the question. He sipped the coffee, scalding his tongue slightly, and realized he had no appetite for the sandwich. Instead, he started searching online for private investigators near me. The search results were underwhelming, mostly cheap claims about following a spouse discreetly. Did he really want to go down that road? Before he could decide, his phone buzzed. A text from Valerie. "Hey, babe, can you pick up Emma's new dance shoes on your way home? She needs them tomorrow." A normal request from a normal wife. The incongruity stung. He stared at the text for a few seconds, feeling a slight tremor in his hand. He typed back, "Sure, send me the place," then stuffed the phone into his jacket pocket with more force than intended. That evening, he arrived home with the requested dance shoes. Valerie greeted him with a peck on the cheek. Emma scampered in, squealing in excitement about her new pink slippers. Jake toddled around, brandishing a plastic dinosaur that roared squeakily. The house smelled of dinner, some tomato sauce simmering on the stove. If he hadn't found that piece of foil, he would have told himself life is good. But now, everything seemed layered with falsehood. He caught glimpses of Valerie checking her phone whenever it buzzed, her expression shifting, then brightening whenever she saw him looking. She served up dinner, asked about his day with polite interest, and he recited a half-truth about finishing project reviews. He watched her carefully. She seemed genuinely affectionate, with the kids nodding at Emma's endless stories about preschool drama, ruffling Jake's hair. She asked him if they might consider a weekend trip soon, somewhere scenic. But beneath that domestic bliss, Clayton's new awareness lurked. The dinner conversation felt like a performance, orchestrated to keep him from suspecting. By the time he tucked the kids in, reading them a short story about talking animals, he felt physically and mentally drained. He wondered, how long has she been lying to me? The question wouldn't let him go. At bedtime, Valerie slipped into a silky nightgown, sliding under the covers beside him. She curled closer, head on his shoulder. "You all right, Clay? You seem distant." He forced a small laugh. "Just a lot on my mind. The new city project is a headache." She traced her fingers lightly down his arm. "Well, I'm here if you need to vent." "Yeah, sure." He swallowed the surge of bitterness. If she was cheating, how could she act this calm and supportive? Some part of him was tempted to just fling the evidence in her face right then. Demand answers, watch her reaction. But that same logical side said, wait, gather more proof. Confrontation without facts was like building on shaky ground. So he simply said, "Thanks, babe," turned off the light, and stared at the dark ceiling for hours, his wife softly breathing at his side. Work the next day was a blur. Sometime between client calls, Clayton found himself revisiting the idea of hiring outside help, a private investigator. But as he scrolled through websites, reading reviews, it felt too hasty, too invasive. More than that, he was the type to do things himself. If he was going to root out the truth, it'd be by his own planning. He found a website for discrete camera equipment, voice recorders, phone cloning tools. The chat support on the site boasted of leading-edge spy tech for personal use. He felt a twinge of guilt. Is this me now, spying on my wife like I'm in a cheap detective novel? But if the alternative was being ignorant, then yes, it was him now. By the end of that afternoon, he placed an online order for a small set of cameras, each roughly the size of a pen cap. They claimed high resolution, motion-activated recording, easily hidden around the house. He also purchased a phone cloning device that was rumored to be effective if he could get physical access to Valerie's phone for just a few minutes. He wanted to know everything. The next major step was purely pragmatic: DNA tests. He closed his office door, trembling at the notion. Ordering a test kit for Emma and Jake felt monstrous, like he was betraying them by even suspecting they might not be his children. But the doubt was there, and ignoring it wouldn't help. So he found a reputable lab that offered discreet at-home paternity testing. The kit would include swabs he could collect and mail back, with results typically available online within a week or so. He placed the order, swallowing the lump in his throat. All he could think of was little Emma's face, how she beamed at him when he read bedtime stories. The idea that she might not be his biological daughter nearly paralyzed him. Jake, too, was so attached, always climbing into his lap. What if? But he had to know. He leaned back in his chair, heart pounding, and realized his entire existence was shifting. If it turned out neither child was his, then his marriage and fatherhood were built on illusions. The weight of that possibility crashed over him. For a long minute, he pressed his palms to his eyes, breathed slowly, and steadied himself. One step at a time. When he got home that evening, Valerie was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Harriet, Valerie's grandmother, sat on the sofa with Emma, flipping through picture books. Harriet was an elegant woman in her late 70s, her gray hair pulled into a neat chignon. She smelled faintly of lavender, always wearing string pearls and pressed slacks. She offered a tight smile as Clayton walked in. "Oh, Clayton, didn't know you'd be home so soon." She closed the children's book carefully. "Where's Valerie?" he asked, trying to sound casual. An errand. She asked me to babysit. The kids had an early dinner. Clayton nodded, stepping into the living room, ruffling Emma's hair. She giggled. Harriet rarely babysat on a whim. Usually Valerie planned these things out. He forced a pleasant tone. Everything all right? Harriet shrugged, her gaze drifting. She said she had to pick up something from her office, some forms Miles needed. A slight emphasis on Miles's name. Harriet pressed her lips together, then replaced her mild frown with a quick smile. Anyway, I'll be leaving in a bit. Need to catch up on my reading. She patted Emma's arm and rose, smoothing her blouse. Clayton offered to walk her to the door, and as they neared the front entry, Harriet gave him a once-over. You look tired, dear. Everything okay with you two? He couldn't read her expression concern or something else. Harriet had always championed Valerie's career, forging connections with wealthy acquaintances. She had introduced Valerie to Miles Chapman, after all. He forced a neutral tone. I'm fine, Harriet. Work's been stressful. She nodded, eyes lingering on his. Well, if you ever need advice, I'm here. You know that, right? He mustered a polite smile. Of course. Thank you. He watched her leave. The moment the door shut, he exhaled. Harriet always had a strange presence, like she was constantly evaluating everyone's net worth or importance. He wondered how far that unwavering support for Valerie extended. Would Harriet cover for her if there was an affair? Valerie returned an hour later, carrying a small shopping bag. She apologized breezily for taking so long, explaining she needed new office supplies. Then she pivoted, asked how the kids were. Everything was so casually normal that Clayton felt anger licking at his insides. If she was lying to him, she was doing it skillfully. At bedtime, after the kids were asleep, he found himself alone with her in the living room. The TV was on, some mindless cooking show. Valerie curled up on the couch, phone in hand, occasionally glancing his way. He sat in the armchair, arms crossed. Finally, she spoke. Honey, is everything all right? Everything. You've been off for a couple days now. He studied her face, noting how her eyes didn't waver. Just busy with a new contract, he said. Nothing big. You sure? She set her phone down, crossing to his chair, resting her hands on his shoulders. I'm worried about you. Clayton forced a smirk. Don't be. I'm fine. But his mind whispered, maybe you should worry about yourself, Valerie, because I will find out the truth. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. Okay. But if something's bothering you, I'm here. He nodded, heart cold. I know. He watched as she flicked off the TV and disappeared into the bedroom, leaving the faintest whiff of her vanilla perfume in the air. Once he heard the shower running, he pulled out his phone, confirming the shipping status of the hidden cameras. Delivery was set for tomorrow. This time, tomorrow night, he'd be planting them throughout the house. He had no intention of letting her slip through his fingers, not anymore. The camera gear arrived, discreetly packaged, the next afternoon. Clayton had it delivered to his office rather than risk Valerie stumbling upon a suspicious box at home. The plain cardboard was unmarked, with no hint of the contents inside. During his lunch break, he took it into a private corner of the building's basement storage, unboxing each small camera, flipping through instructions. They were as advertised, compact, near microscopic, with adhesive backing for easy installation. The small memory cards could hold hours of footage, though he'd have to swap them out or set them to motion-activated mode. The idea of turning his home into a covert surveillance nest made his stomach churn, but the alternative was living in ignorance. He stashed them in his briefcase, glancing at his watch. He'd told Valerie he'd be late tonight, some excuse about a business dinner. In reality, he planned to leave the office early, quietly slip home, and install these cameras before she got back. The kids would be at daycare until 4, so the window was tight. But he was determined. 3:30 found him pulling into his driveway, heart hammering. He double-checked that no one was home. The front curtains were drawn, no sign of Harriet's car. Perfect. Inside, he moved quickly. One camera behind the living room TV, angled to catch most of the couch area. Another discreetly wedged in a decorative arrangement of fake flowers on the bookshelf. In the master bedroom, he placed one high in the corner, hidden behind a small crocheted tapestry. Another in the bathroom, though he felt uneasy about that, imagining all sorts of privacy issues. Yet if she was stashing pills in there, he wanted eyes on it. Finally, he headed for the garage, placing a tiny audio recorder in Valerie's SUV glove box. He'd already set up a separate voice-activated device under her driver's seat last night, but a second one wouldn't hurt. By the time he finished, he was sweating lightly, adrenaline coursing. He locked up and sped away, returning to the office as if nothing had happened. Now all he had to do was wait and watch. That evening, he lingered at the office, telling Valerie he was stuck in a meeting. She didn't protest. In fact, she sounded almost relieved. He used the time to remote check the cameras via the small phone app that came with them. Sure enough, each camera's feed lit up on his phone. The living room was empty and dark, the overhead lights turned off. No sign of Valerie yet. Then around 7 p.m., the feed in the living room showed movement. He watched with tense fascination as Valerie entered, flicked on a lamp, and set her purse on the couch. She didn't look upset or anything, just normal. She scrolled her phone, typed a few messages, then rose and disappeared from the camera's view, probably heading to the kitchen. Clayton's phone gave a quiet beep. The bedroom camera had motion. He switched feeds, saw Valerie pass through, rummaging in the dresser. Then she left. Nothing suspicious so far, just routine. But his heart pounded anyway. He felt like he was intruding on her privacy in a fundamental way. But that piece of foil in his car's glove box reminded him this is necessary. Later that night, after he returned home, Valerie was in bed already, reading on her tablet. She greeted him with a mild, "Long day." He nodded. "Everything okay here?" She shrugged, a faint smile. "Kids are asleep. I was just about to turn in." Clayton forced a yawn, murmuring about exhaustion from the office. In truth, once she dozed off, he'd be transferring the camera data onto his laptop, scanning for any sign of illicit behavior. This pattern of secrecy and vigilance had begun, and it weighed on him heavily. He despised deception, even if he was the one employing it for a cause. But he told himself, one step closer to the truth. That was the only thing that mattered. The next morning, his phone clone device arrived. He rushed home from work during lunch again. With Valerie out, presumably at the office, he needed just a few minutes alone with her phone to run the duplicating software. If she used a separate phone, that was a complication, but at least he'd confirm if her main phone was squeaky clean or not. He found her phone resting on the kitchen counter unlocked for once. A stroke of luck. He plugged in the small device he'd bought, watching the percentage progress bar climb. The entire process took about 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity. Any second, he worried she'd walk in unexpectedly. But the house remained silent. At 83% complete, the phone buzzed. A text from a contact named Suzanne, reading, "M, meet me at the usual spot." 5:30. The letter M jumped out at him. Miles? Maybe. Could be someone else. But he had strong suspicions. Right then, the progress bar hit 100%. He ejected the device, placed her phone exactly as he'd found it, then left. Back at the office, he loaded the cloned data onto his personal laptop. Texts, call logs, pictures. He scrolled through them with mounting frustration. Because ironically, it all looked normal. No texts from Miles, no suspicious photos, just the usual mom chats and group threads. He frowned, scanning again. The last text from Suzanne was about scheduling a spa day, so that 5:30 message must have come in after the backup. Or maybe it was from a different phone number. He realized this probably meant she had a second phone. The chat groups looked almost too curated. Valerie was no fool. If she was cheating, she'd be careful, so the main phone might be just a decoy. The real communications probably happened elsewhere. That only reaffirmed his plan to place cameras. The phone approach alone wouldn't suffice. Meanwhile, the DNA test kits arrived. 2 small boxes with cotton swabs and discreet return envelopes. That evening, after dinner, he volunteered to handle the bedtime routine for Emma and Jake. Valerie happily retreated to the living room. While reading Emma her favorite princess book, he paused. "Hey, sweetheart, I need to do a little check in your mouth, okay? Like at the dentist." Emma scrunched her nose but opened her mouth obediently when he asked, "Quick swab, quick swirl." She giggled, not suspecting anything. Later, with Jake half asleep, He repeated the process, swiping the inside of his cheek in one fluid motion. The boy barely stirred, rolling over in his dinosaur-themed pajamas. Clayton's chest felt heavy with guilt. He whispered, "Good night, buddy," pressing a gentle kiss to Jake's forehead, then carefully tucked the swab away. In his home office, he labeled the samples, sealed them, and stuck them in a padded envelope addressed to the lab. He'd mail it out first thing in the morning. If the results proved the kids were biologically his, all this tension would subside, maybe. The birth control question remained, but at least fatherhood would be secure. If the results said otherwise, he inhaled deeply. He didn't want to linger on that possibility, but he had to be prepared. Days passed in a tense dance. Clayton balanced normal life work, kids, dinner table small talk with covert operations. He would collect the camera footage each night, scanning through to see if Valerie brought anyone into the house or acted out of line. So far, no smoking gun. She was either extremely careful or using a different location for her indiscretions. He did catch a glimpse once. Around 2 p.m. on a weekday, the living room camera recorded Valerie returning home early, rummaging behind the TV stand. She produced a small phone from the corner, typed a message quickly, then left. That phone had no case. It looked like a cheap burner model. He watched the footage with a slow burn in his gut. So she does have a second phone. The question was, where does she keep it? The next day, he studied the camera feed in real time, noticing she repeated the pattern. Come home briefly, retrieve the hidden phone, text or call for a few minutes, then hide it again. She was cunning, never lingered, never gave him a chance to pop in unexpectedly. And Harriet? Possibly an accomplice, or at least turning a blind eye. Every time he saw that phone on camera, he yearned to break down the door, grab it from her hand and demand an explanation, but logic reined him in. He needed bulletproof evidence for a definitive confrontation. One evening, he reviewed fresh footage from the bedroom camera, half expecting to see nothing but mundane bed-making or laundry. Instead, he saw Valerie on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. The camera lacked audio, so he only caught her mouth movements, but her expression was animated, the way she smiled or covered her mouth with girlish excitement. Then she pulled a small overnight bag from the closet, stashing it under the bed. After the call ended, she quickly texted something, smiling coyly before leaving the room. Clayton's stomach twisted. Was she planning a secret rendezvous? He leaned forward, analyzing each second of that silent footage. The timestamp read 6:17 p.m. He'd been at work, having told her he had to stay late to finalize a project. She must have known he wouldn't walk in unexpectedly. He picked up his phone, texting her. "Going to be another late night, sorry, babe." She replied with a simple "okay, don't stress." Don't stress indeed. It was nearly midnight when he finally shut down his computer. He hadn't found direct proof of Miles on that feed, but her sly grin while packing that bag told him everything he needed. She was planning an out-of-town or overnight fling. Soon. The next morning, he woke with a headache. He'd barely slept, haunted by thoughts of Valerie sneaking off with Miles, or whoever it was, but his money was on Miles. She was out with Harriet some dress shopping errand, apparently. Emma and Jake were with Harriet's driver, heading to preschool. Perfect. He rummaged around the bathroom, determined to find that birth control strip in the flesh. He searched high and low, behind toiletries, in the medicine cabinet, in the hamper for dirty clothes. Finally, he checked inside an old makeup bag stashed under the sink. Bingo. The pill pack was stuffed beneath tissues and tampons. A half-used strip daze systematically popped out. He clenched it in his hand. Proof. He snapped a photo with his phone. Then he carefully replaced it exactly how he found it. He returned to the bedroom, scanning for the overnight bag. Sure enough, it was still under the bed, partially zipped. He slid it out just a bit. Inside, a change of clothes, some lingerie he'd never seen her wear for him, a small toiletry kit. Jaw tight, he zipped it closed, replaced it. He wanted to tear it all out, rage or sob, but forced himself to remain calm. Wait, just wait. Days turned to a week. He developed an unwavering routine. He'd check the cameras daily, record any suspicious calls from the audio device in her car, note her schedule. Meanwhile, he awaited the dreaded DNA results. The tension was suffocating like living a double life, but he refused to falter. One afternoon at work, he got a cryptic text from Valerie. Might stay overnight for a team-building event tomorrow. Miles wants me to join. Harriet can babysit. I'll keep you posted. No mention or invitation to him, no contact about location, just a bland excuse. The only team-building events he knew her firm to hold were group lunches or a day retreat, rarely an overnight. It reeked of deception. Clayton calmly replied, "Sure, no problem. Let me know if you need anything." Inside, his blood boiled. This was it. She was crossing that final line. He stared at the text, exhaling slowly. Time to act. He had more than enough suspicion. Soon, he'd have the DNA results. After that, he would plan the next steps meticulously. The morning of Valerie's team-building departure, Clayton left the house early, pretending he had an on-site meeting. In reality, he parked down the street, waiting to see if someone would pick her up or if she'd drive off somewhere unusual. Sure enough, around 9 a.m., Miles's black Mercedes pulled up. Valerie hustled out, rolling a small suitcase behind her. She climbed into the passenger seat. The trunk popped open for her luggage, and then they sped away. Clayton's hand shook on the steering wheel. At least now he had the final piece, a direct link to Miles. He snapped a few photos with his phone, capturing the car's license plate, the two of them. He wanted to follow them, see exactly where they ended up, but he had no official private investigator training. Instead, he filed the images for later evidence. This alone proved her intimacy with Miles outside standard office hours. That day, around noon, Clayton left the office with a single-minded goal: break into that secret burner phone at home. The kids were at Harriet's, no one in the house. He had time. Inside, he located the phone behind the TV stand, right where he'd seen her stash it on camera. The device was locked with a passcode. His heart thudded. Damn. He tried the obvious codes: her birth date, the kids' birthdays, even Harriet's birth year. No luck. He rummaged through a few drawers for a clue. Eventually, he found a small, sticky note in Valerie's old day planner with a 4-digit sequence circled in pink ink. He typed it into the phone. Bingo. It unlocked. Messages flooded the screen, a conversation with someone labeled M. The earliest texts dated back nearly 2 years. He scrolled, eyes scanning intimate lines that made him feel physically ill. They discussed sneaking around, booking hotel rooms, times Miles got her small gifts. They planned cover stories, referencing Harriet's assistance, even jokes about how Clayton will never suspect a thing, followed by laughter and flirting. The deeper he went, the more vile it became. At times, they even discussed the kids. Apparently Miles had doubts about them. He asked if maybe at least one child was his. Valerie responded with a coy, "We'll see. Could be." The callous nature stunned Clayton. He read messages about how Miles wanted to be a real father eventually, once Clayton's out of the picture. The date on that message was from a few months ago. Clayton sank onto the couch, phone in trembling hands, breath coming in ragged bursts. 2 years. They had been lying to him for 2 years minimum. The kids he cherished, possibly fathered by Miles. All this time, Harriet knew. She was complicit. He felt his vision blur with tears, then transform into a hot wave of fury. It was like everything he believed about his marriage was a twisted farce. Eventually, he took a deep breath, found the camera app on the burner phone, and discovered photos. Mostly Valerie and Miles in hotel rooms, Miles with an arm around her waist, or selfies in bed. Some explicit shots. Clayton forced himself to keep scrolling to see how far this rabbit hole went. The last image was from last week, apparently at some fancy suite. He noted the date and location data in the file. He copied as many images as he could onto a flash drive he'd brought specifically for this. If he was going to confront them, he wanted unassailable evidence. Then he carefully placed the phone back behind the TV stand, wiping any trace of his intrusion. He left the house on unsteady legs, adrenaline pumping. Now there's no doubt. The conclusion was unavoidable. Valerie had orchestrated a massive betrayal with Miles. Harriet was covering for them, and the kid's paternity was in question. He needed one last confirmation: the DNA results. After that, he'd detonate his nuclear plan. The next morning, an email arrived from the DNA lab. Subject line: test results available. Clayton sat at his desk alone, letting the cursor hover over the link. He felt nauseous, but there was no point delaying. He clicked. A PDF opened with official data stating that The probability of paternity is 0%. For both Emma and Jake, 0. He stared at the screen, numb. All the tension he'd harbored had led to this single page. He read it again, hoping maybe he misunderstood. But no. The lab tested 2 samples with his reference swab. Neither matched. They were not his children. His vision blurred. He clenched his fists so tight his nails bit into his palms. He wanted to throw something, to let out a primal scream, to break down. But he was at the office behind a closed door, so he forced composure. Instead, tears slid silently down his cheeks. Everything was a lie. 9 years of marriage, illusions, fatherhood. He realized with heartbreak that the father was almost certainly Miles, especially given those texts. But the lab results simply said excluded, with no further detail. He shut his laptop and pressed his hands over his face, exhaling shaky breaths. Focus. Keep it together. Right now, heartbreak was overshadowed by cold rage. The unstoppable logic of an engineer told him, this is final, unambiguous. You must act. And he would. He reached out to Warren, his longtime friend and finance lawyer. Over coffee that afternoon, they sat in a dim booth at a quiet cafe. Warren eyed him with concern. Clay, you look like you haven't slept in weeks. Clayton slid the PDF across the table. I got the DNA results. Warren scanned them, jaw tightening. Holy, I'm so sorry. He returned the paper. Guess that means you're ready for that plan we discussed. Clayton's voice came out rough. Yeah, I need to protect my assets because if I file for divorce, she'll try to take half the company, the house, everything. But there's no way in hell she's walking away with my life's work after this. Warren nodded. We can set up a trust, move your shares of the engineering firm into it, convert your personal savings to less traceable holdings. You'll appear nearly broke on paper. Meanwhile, we gather enough evidence to bury them. If Harriet's involved financially, that might help. We can prove collusion, possibly. The big question is how nuclear you want to go. Clayton stared at the dark wood of the table. I want them in ruins. She took 9 years from me. Valerie, Miles, Harriet ruined my family. He swallowed. I need an attorney who specializes in high-stakes divorces, paternity fraud, adultery, emotional distress, everything. Warren scribbled a name on a napkin, Nicole Danvers. She's top-notch for that. Ruthless. Call her. Start moving your money now. We'll cover all bases. Clayton pocketed the napkin. Thanks. He left that cafe with a grim sense of determination. The heartbreak was still there, but overshadowed by a searing need for retribution. This was no time to be the gullible husband. He was done being a fool. That evening, under the pretense of working late, Clayton met with Nicole Danvers at her plush downtown office. She was a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s with a crisp tone that tolerated no nonsense. After listening to his summary, her expression turned steely. So you have text evidence, photographic evidence, DNA test results proving the children aren't yours, plus knowledge that her grandmother actively aided this deception? Nicole said, flipping through her notes. Yes, Clayton replied, voice barely steady. She nodded slowly. We'll file for divorce on grounds of adultery and paternity fraud. We can also pursue a civil suit against Miles for alienation of affection. And if Harriet took money to help them, we might have a case against her as well. The question is how public you want this to get, he exhaled. Public. I want everyone to know what they did. Nicole's lips curved in a faint, fierce smile. Then we'll do it your way. Just be prepared for the emotional toll. This isn't a simple break. It's war. Clayton nodded. They deserve everything coming. The next step was locking down finances. Over the next week, under Warren's guidance, Clayton set up an offshore trust. He sold a portion of his assets to shell corporations that he effectively controlled, ensuring Valerie couldn't claim them. He refinanced the house in his name only, pulling out equity so on paper he was saddled with debt. In short, by the time he was done, it would look like he had almost nothing left. He also prepared for the possibility that the court might force him to pay child support, though typically, paternity fraud gave him grounds to disclaim fatherhood. Nicole assured him, with the DNA proof, you can disestablish paternity. But it was still murky. He wouldn't let them take a dime. Meanwhile, he told Valerie none of this. He kept up the facade of working late, even pretended to be a bit stressed financially, dropping hints about the business might be in trouble. She seemed uninterested, barely asking. That only stoked his fury further. Finally, Nicole had the divorce papers ready. She also prepared a savage lawsuit against Miles. They agreed on a date to serve them simultaneously, Valerie at her office, Miles at his. Harriet would be next. The plan was set for next Monday. The weekend approached, and Harriet announced she was hosting a grand party for her 80th birthday the following week. Perfect timing, as far as Clayton was concerned. He privately told Nicole, "I want to make a scene. I want Harriet and Valerie humiliated in front of family." Nicole raised an eyebrow but nodded. "We'll see how we can use that." Clayton spent that weekend in a strange calm. He didn't speak to Valerie more than necessary, only cold civility. She seemed to sense tension but didn't push it. Possibly she was too busy sneaking out to meet Miles. Or maybe Harriet kept telling her everything was fine. It didn't matter, because come Monday, her whole world would be upended. Sunday night, Clayton locked himself in his home office, reviewing all the incriminating materials one last time. The flash drive with texts, the voice recordings from the car that mentioned Harriet's hush money, the photos from that cheap hotel. He planned to distribute them widely, Valerie's family, Miles's co-workers, Harriet's esteemed society friends. He wanted no chance of them escaping unscathed. He closed the laptop. Tomorrow morning, the process server would arrive at Miles's corporate building. Another would confront Valerie in her office hallway. Meanwhile, Harriet would remain blissfully unaware until the birthday event. He'd be there, personally unveiling the worst of it. Clayton leaned back in his chair, letting out a shaky breath. The man he was a month ago, gullible, trusting, was gone. In his place stood someone sharper, harder. It wasn't a good feeling, but it was necessary. With the kids asleep in their rooms, he wondered if he'd ever look at them the same again. They weren't his biologically, but he still cared for them. Yet the betrayal overshadowed even that paternal bond. He flicked off the light, stepping into the dark hallway. Tomorrow would change everything. There was no turning back. Monday morning arrived in a swirl of tension. At 9 a.m., Clayton sat in his car outside Miles's sleek office tower, watching from a distance. A suited process server, accompanied by a small security detail, marched into the lobby. Minutes later, Miles stormed out, phone in hand, face contorted with anger as he argued with the server. People in the lobby gawked. Clayton couldn't hear the shouting, but he felt satisfaction throbbing in his chest. "You're served, you son of a bitch." Meanwhile, across town, another server was handing Valerie an envelope in her office corridor. Nicole had arranged for maximum visibility, co-workers around, some curious eyes. The shock on Valerie's face must have been priceless, but Clayton wasn't there to see it. He'd left that job to the professionals. He texted Nicole. "All set?" She replied instantly, "Yes." She has the papers. It was done. The divorce petition demanded dissolution of their marriage due to adultery, with explicit mention of paternity fraud. The suit against Miles demanded damages for emotional distress and alienation of affection. Harriet's subpoena would come later in the week, ahead of her party. For now, Clayton simply smiled grimly and drove off. His phone buzzed repeatedly, Valerie calling. He ignored it. Let her stew. By noon, he had nearly 20 missed calls and a flurry of texts from her, ranging from, "Clay, talk to me," to, "We can fix this. Please don't do anything rash." The desperation in her messages only fueled his determination. She'd lied and cheated for years. Now she wanted a conversation? He turned off his phone. The next time he turned it on, he saw a message from Harriet. "Call me immediately. We need to sort this out." He smirked. Harriet must have heard from Valerie by now. Or from Miles. Let them panic. The net was closing in on all three. That evening, he returned home to find Valerie waiting on the couch. The kids were with Harriet, presumably. Valerie looked disheveled, eyes red as if she'd been crying. She stood as soon as he entered, brandishing the envelope of divorce papers. "Clay, what is this?" she demanded, voice shaky. He dropped his car keys on the side table. "It's exactly what it looks like." She stepped closer, tears brimming. I know it looks bad, but can't we talk? This is all so sudden." "Sudden?" He let out a sardonic laugh. "I've known about your affair with Miles for weeks. I've seen the texts, the photos. The only sudden thing is that you got caught. Also, I got the DNA results. 0%, Valerie. They're not my kids. He spat the words with quiet venom. She covered her mouth, tears spilling. Clayton, please, you can't know the whole story. I was going to... He raised a hand to cut her off. Stop. I don't want your excuses. You've lied for 2 years. You, Miles, Harriet, all of you conspired to make me the fool. I'm done. She sobbed openly. Yes, I messed up, but we can fix. He stepped away. You messed up? You robbed me of fatherhood. You let me believe Emma and Jake were mine. You let me get a vasectomy while you were messing around with him. And Harriet, she was taking hush money? God knows how deep that goes. He shook his head. You want to talk? Fine. We'll talk in court. Valerie collapsed onto the couch, face in her hands, sobbing. Clayton, I never wanted it to be like this. Her voice was muffled. I was scared Harriet told me Miles offered. She broke off, shuddering. Clayton's voice was ice. Save it. Pack your things and get out. The kids can go to Harriet's or Miles's for all I care. The documents will tell you everything about custody and financial matters, which, by the way, you'll find next to nothing. I have no intention of paying for your betrayal. She looked up, eyes desperate. You can't just where will I go? You have your precious Miles, don't you? Or Harriet. Let them figure it out. He glared. In fact, Harriet's big birthday party is this Friday. I'll see you both there. I have a special gift planned. Valerie burst into fresh tears, but Clayton refused to be moved. He walked to the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and began stuffing some of his own clothes inside. If she refused to leave, he'd do it first. He wanted to be away from her presence. From this house full of memories turned toxic. Soon enough, Valerie stumbled into the doorway. Clayton, the kids, they love you. They need you. Even if they aren't your don't. He zipped the bag. I'm not discussing Emma or Jake right now. They'll be devastated if you vanish from their lives. They see you as their father. Her voice cracked. He paused, a flicker of pain crossing his face. He did love those kids. But right now, the betrayal overshadowed every parental feeling. I'll decide what role I have, if any, once this is all settled, he said coolly. Your manipulations won't keep me tethered. Valerie sank against the wall, tears staining her cheeks. Clayton brushed past her, duffel bag over his shoulder. You have your lawyer's info. Use it, he said, and left the house. He spent that night in a modest hotel not far from the office. The anonymity of a cramped, neutral room felt strangely comforting. At least he could think without seeing those lying walls. He texted Warren with an update. She knows everything now, moved out for the time being. Warren wrote back, We're set for Harriet's subpoena on Thursday. Good luck. He also texted Nicole, Valerie meltdown, stage 2 complete. Nicole replied, Let her melt down. Keep all communications in writing if possible. Clayton tried to sleep, but images of Emma and Jake haunted him. They were innocent in all this, yet they were irreversibly linked to Miles. A father who probably didn't even want them. He tossed and turned, eventually drifting into a restless doze, dreaming of broken glass and empty cribs. The next couple days, he carried on as normal at the office. He told his partners there was personal drama, so he might be less available, but he'd handle essential tasks. Valerie bombarded him with texts. We need to talk about the kids, about Harriet, about finances. He answered only through short, sterile messages. Please communicate via our attorneys. Harriet also tried to contact him multiple times, leaving voicemails that swung between anger, You ungrateful fool, you have no idea what you're doing, and pseudo-sympathy. Let's meet and handle this quietly. I'll make sure you're compensated. He ignored them, let them sweat. He had the nuclear plan in motion. After Harriet's birthday fiasco, everything would be laid bare. The synergy of filing the lawsuits, exposing them publicly, and humiliating Harriet at her own party felt almost too perfect. Part of him flinched at the cruelty of it, but his anger demanded a public reckoning. They'd stolen his fatherhood, so he'd shred their reputation. Thursday arrived. Harriet got served. According to Nicole, Harriet was outraged, calling the law firm repeatedly. She threatened to use her connections to destroy Clayton if he didn't back off. Nicole calmly told Harriet that any further intimidation attempts would be added to the case. Harriet hung up. That night, Valerie sent a frantic text. "Grandma is furious. She says you're out of your mind. Please, let's handle this quietly. Our family doesn't need more scandal." Clayton read it with grim amusement. Their family was a lie. He left the text unanswered. When Friday rolled around, Harriet's 80th birthday party was in full swing at her lavish estate. Clayton knew the guest list was a who's who of Harriet's social circle, plus Miles and some of his business associates, presumably. Valerie would be there too, likely trying to keep up appearances. Clayton arrived late, wearing a sharp suit, jaw set. The tension in the crowd was palpable as he walked through the ornate foyer. People whispered some knew he'd sued Harriet, or had an ongoing divorce with Valerie. He ignored the stairs, heading straight for the main hall. Harriet, draped in a glittering gown, stood near the head of a long table, talking to a cluster of older women. She spotted him and froze, her face tightening. Valerie hovered behind her, eyes puffy, expression full of dread. Miles was nowhere to be seen, possibly lurking in a corner or had already fled. Didn't matter. Clayton took a microphone from a small podium near the stage where Harriet evidently expected some tribute speeches. The guests quieted, sensing something unusual. Harriet marched forward, hissing under her breath, "Don't you dare cause a scene, not here." He gazed at her calmly, then his voice echoed through the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering to celebrate Harriet's milestone birthday. It's truly a memorable occasion. She's been quite an influence on my life." A few uncertain chuckles rippled. He gestured at a nearby projector set up for birthday photos. "I've prepared a little slideshow. Harriet, I hope you appreciate the candor." Harriet's eyes widened in panic. Valerie rushed forward, whispering, "Clayton, no, please!" He stepped back, ignoring her, and clicked a remote. The screen behind him flickered. Instead of harmless family photos, the audience saw images of Valerie and Miles in explicit embraces, date-stamped from last month at a hotel. Gasps and cries erupted. Harriet let out a strangled, "Stop!" People recoiled, scandalized. Valerie stared in horror, tears streaming. Clayton spoke over the uproar. "For 2 years, my wife Valerie and her boss Miles Chapman have carried on an affair Harriet knew and facilitated it, even accepting hush money. The children I believe to be mine are actually Miles's. I have the DNA results to prove it. Harriet's part in all this was quite active." A hush fell as he clicked to another slide. Screenshots of text conversations referencing Harriet babysitting the kids to allow secret trysts. Harriet taking money from Miles. The older woman shrank, face pale, some of her wealthy friends stepping away in disgust. "My marriage," Clayton continued, voice trembling only slightly, "was a lie, built on Valerie's deception. Harriet helped. Miles financed it. But I'm done being the fool." Valerie let out a wail, stumbling forward to yank the cable from the projector. But the damage was done. People had seen enough. A stunned hush, followed by a wave of frantic murmurs. Harriet pointed a shaking finger at him. You vile man. Ruining my birthday." "You had no right." Clayton set the microphone down gently, stepping close enough to glare at her. "No right? You manipulated me for years. Let me believe I was a father. You took Miles's money in exchange for lying to me. Now you see the consequences." He turned to the crowd. "If anyone wants more details, I'll be happy to provide them after this celebration." Then he walked out of the hall, heart hammering. Behind him, an uproar erupted, guests confronting Harriet, condemning her moral bankruptcy, Valerie sobbing, Miles, finally appearing, trying to hush furious onlookers. Clayton allowed himself a faint, grim smile. The nuclear bomb had dropped, and they were right in the blast zone. Clayton strode out of Harriet's palatial estate, stepping into the cool night air. The scene behind him was pure chaos, guests murmuring in scandalized tones, Harriet's outraged shrieks echoing through the halls, Valerie's tearful sobs mixing with the hush of stunned relatives. Outside, under the glow of the elegant driveway lamps, a few onlookers stared as he passed. Their eyes were full of questions he no longer cared to answer. Every breath he took seemed to burn. The revelation had been unleashed. Explicit images of Valerie and Miles, Harriet's hush money machinations, the DNA bombshell that Emma and Jake were never his children. He'd planned to drop this nuclear disclosure. Yet the reality of having just done so left his chest tight. There had been no turning back the moment he pressed play on that humiliating slideshow, and he felt a cold satisfaction warring with heartbreak deep in his core. He reached his car, slid behind the wheel, and paused in darkness. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned triumph, despair, anger. On the passenger seat lay a folder of legal documents he might need if Harriet or Miles tried something underhanded. He exhaled sharply. All these years they conspired behind my back. Now the entire world around them would see them for what they were. His phone buzzed. Warren's name lit the screen. Clayton pressed the device to his ear. "Yeah?" Warren's voice came calmly. "Heard the show was a success. Word is Harriet's meltdown was spectacular. Are you all right, man?" Clayton stared at the mansion in his rearview mirror, its windows blazing with light. "I'm in one piece," he replied, voice hoarse. "Has Nicole heard anything?" "Just that Harriet's attorney tried calling, screaming about defamation. But Nicole's got it under control. No worries." Clayton closed his eyes, leaning back. "Good. I'm heading home. Or rather, back to the hotel." A pause. "I can't believe I used to call that woman Grandma Harriet. She treated me like a useful idiot." "Clay, you did what needed to be done." Warren hesitated. "One step at a time, remember?" Clayton ended the call without further comment. The phone still vibrated with new notifications. He glimpsed Valerie's name among them. He refused to open her messages. He'd said his piece. Nothing left for them to discuss outside a courtroom. With the engine rumbling to life, he turned onto the quiet suburban road, leaving Harriet's party and the last vestige of his illusions behind. 20 minutes later, he parked at the modest hotel where he'd been staying since he vacated the family house. Stepping into the tiny lobby, he forced a faint nod at the receptionist, who recognized him by now. He looked exhausted, tie loosened, jacket wrinkled from tension. His room was sterile, beige walls, a single window overlooking a dim parking lot, a bed that squeaked whenever he sat on it. It was a far cry from the comfortable home he once shared with Valerie and the kids. The emptiness gnawed at him. "Don't think about them right now," he told himself. That path would lead only to heartbreak. He powered on his laptop at the small desk. First, he fired off an email to Nicole, summarizing the public exposure at Harriet's party. "I confronted Harriet with the evidence. Dozens of witnesses saw the slideshow. Now they know about the affair and hush money. Next steps?" He attached a couple of quick phone snapshots he'd managed to take of Harriet's reaction, though they didn't fully capture the mayhem. Then he clicked through the recordings from the hidden devices at home. Valerie wouldn't have left the property yet. He was curious if her meltdown or Harriet's might have triggered any new confessions. The feed from the living room revealed Harriet's shrill voice echoing in the background, though it was faint. He recognized only fragments. "That monster humiliating me, worthless wretch." Typical Harriet, outraged to be called out, outraged that her veneer of respectability was shattered. Clayton let the audio play while he unbuttoned his dress shirt, eyes distant. Snatches of conversation, Harriet screeching about, "How dare he bring our family secrets out like that?" and Valerie sobbing about, "He wasn't supposed to do this in public. Miles is in shock." Harriet threatened to ruin him financially, though that threat was hollow now that Clayton's assets were locked in trusts. He felt a grim sense of victory. For once, Harriet had zero power to sway him. Exhaustion finally overwhelmed him. He switched off the laptop, sank onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling. The day's events weighed heavily. Yes, the secret was exposed, but the war was far from finished. Harriet would fight tooth and nail, Miles had the resources for a legal battle, and Valerie, well, there was still the emotional wreckage about the kids. The next few steps might be even more grueling. "At least I'm not in the dark anymore," he thought. "Now they're the ones scrambling for cover." The following morning, Clayton woke early. Tension coiled in his muscles. He decided to venture to the office before sunrise work had become his only stable ground. The building was quiet, a skeleton staff trickling in by 8 o'clock. He retreated to his private office, a corner room with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Usually that view inspired him, gave him mental clarity for designing robust structures. But now, he felt as if the metropolis below was a labyrinth, each towering building a symbol of hidden truths. Stop overthinking, Clay. He pressed his temples, determined to focus on tasks that had nothing to do with Valerie. For a while, he lost himself in a blueprint analysis for a new municipal complex. The columns, beams, and load distributions were the kind of puzzle he understood. This was rational, controllable. No betrayal within crisp lines on a CAD drawing. But inevitably, reality intruded. By mid-morning, his phone lit up with a call from Nicole. He picked up instantly. Her tone was crisp. "So, Harriet's attorney has thrown all sorts of threats at me: defamation, invasion of privacy, emotional distress claims. None of it stands. We'll counter that we simply displayed factual evidence of wrongdoing. Now let's talk about next steps for the divorce side. Valerie's attorney reached out for an emergency meeting. They claim Valerie wants to settle out of court." Clayton's jaw tightened. "Settle? She just got served days ago." "Yes, it's fast, but it's not surprising. She's in damage control mode. My guess is Harriet or Miles is pushing her to limit further scandal. Are you interested in hearing them out, or do you prefer a full trial?" He inhaled. A part of him relished the idea of a public legal battle that laid bare every detail, but that could be time-consuming, draining, and it would keep him entangled with Valerie longer. "I'll meet them," he said finally, "but I'm not budging from the fundamentals. No spousal support, zero claim to my assets, and an official disestablishment of paternity. She's not pinning those kids on me legally if they're not mine." Nicole's voice reflected a small smile. "Understood. We'll lay out our terms. If they balk, we proceed with trial. The meeting is tomorrow at 3 p.m. my office. Be there?" "Yes," Clayton agreed. "Let's see how they squirm." He hung up, feeling a flicker of satisfaction. Valerie might be trying to salvage her situation, but he wouldn't let pity or guilt soften his stance. She'd crossed too many lines to deserve mercy. Late that afternoon, once he finished a grueling round of phone conferences, Clayton found himself restless. He decided to drop by his old house strictly for practical reasons, he told himself. He needed to retrieve a few more personal items, and part of him craved to see the place again, to confirm whether Valerie had moved out. He parked on the street, scanning the driveway. No sign of her SUV. Lights off in most windows. The front lawn looked slightly unkempt, a few scattered toys. He stepped to the door, keys in hand, heart constricting at the memory of how welcoming this threshold once felt. Inside, the hush was eerie. The living room still bore the furniture they'd chosen together, but the air smelled stale, as if no one had opened a window in days. He wandered to the bedroom. A few of Valerie's clothes remained in the closet, but many were gone. She must be staying with Harriet or Miles, he guessed. The children's rooms tugged at his heart. Emma's bed was strewn with plush animals. Jake's dinosaur-themed posters hung crooked on the walls. In Emma's hamper, a tiny pink tutu. She must have worn it for her last dance class. He sank onto the bed, face in his hands, the weight of fatherly longing hitting him. They might not be mine by blood, but he couldn't silence the paternal bond that had formed over the years. The kids loved him, and he had loved them more than life. Now everything was shattered. He forced himself to stand, rummaging in the office area for old tax documents, photos, or keepsakes he wanted to secure. He found an old photo album labeled Our Family Adventures. Flipping it open, pictures of newborn Emma in his arms, Jake's first birthday, each shot a dagger to his chest. The timeline overlapped with Miles's infiltration into their lives. How did I not see it? He wondered. Was I too consumed by work? Too trusting? Before the grief could overwhelm him, he stuffed the album in a box, grabbed a few personal trinkets, and left. The emptiness of the house felt suffocating. Outside, dusk was settling, painting the sky in muted purples. He locked the door behind him. That place isn't my home anymore, he decided grimly. It's just a shell. That night he returned to the hotel, surprise flickering when he spotted Warren waiting in the lobby. Warren offered a tight smile. "Hey, man. I tried calling, but you didn't pick up. Thought I'd drop by." Clayton frowned. He must have silenced his phone. "Everything okay?" Warren shrugged. "Wanted to check on you. And also I've heard Miles is lawyering up big time. He's not just dealing with your personal lawsuit, but also a meltdown at his firm. Harriet's meltdown is fueling speculation about misappropriated funds. It's possible they'll come at you from multiple angles, maybe slander, claiming you manipulated evidence, who knows? Clayton's expression hardened. So be it. Nicole's ready. Let them try. They moved to a corner of the small lounge area. Warren studied him. Clay, be honest with me. How are you holding up? This revenge path is intense. You still have to handle the aftermath with the kids, you know. He rubbed his temples. I'm furious, but also, yeah, the kids weigh on me. I saw their rooms today. It's messed up, Warren. I'm not sure how to navigate that. They're innocent, but every time I remember they're not mine, it stings like a fresh wound. Warren sighed, voice softer. That's tough, but you have to decide if you'll remain in their lives in any capacity, or if it's too painful. Legally, you can disestablish paternity and walk away. Morally, it's complicated as hell. Clayton's gaze fell on the scuffed floor. I know. Right now I can't even think straight about them. I'm not ready, man. My anger at Valerie might color everything. He paused. Maybe once the dust settles, I'll see if they're okay, but right now I have to protect myself. Warren patted his shoulder. Understood. Just don't lose yourself in the process. Clayton nodded, the conversation stirring an ache in his chest. After Warren left, he found himself restless. He paced the small hotel room, trying to quell the storm of emotions. Focus on what's next, he told himself. The divorce settlement meeting tomorrow might be a turning point. One more step in cutting the ties. He could survive this, he had to. The following afternoon, Clayton arrived at Nicole's office precisely at 3. The building was a modern, high-rise law center. Nicole's suite was on the 14th floor, elegant and sterile. He passed a polished reception area where Nicole's paralegal, a poised older woman, nodded in greeting. Go right in, Mr. Reed. They're waiting. Inside the conference room, Nicole sat at the head of a long table, flanked by her associate. Opposite them, Valerie and a woman who must be her new attorney. Valerie looked paler than he remembered, her face drawn, hair pulled back in a tight twist. She barely met his gaze. Clayton took a seat next to Nicole without acknowledging Valerie. He kept his posture rigid, arms resting lightly on the table. Nicole greeted everyone politely, then launched into business. We're here to discuss a possible settlement. My client, Mr. Reed, is open to hearing Miss Reed's proposals, provided certain conditions are met. Valerie's attorney, an unremarkable woman in her 50s, cleared her throat. Let's be frank. The public exposure has caused serious harm to Valerie's reputation. She's lost her job at Miles's firm. Nicole cut in, voice cool. With good reason. She violated policy, engaged in an affair with her superior, resulting in fraudulent claims of paternity. Let's not pretend my client had any moral or legal obligation to protect her from those consequences. Valerie winced. I just want to fix this, Clay. Clayton shot her a cold glance. You think we can fix 9 years of betrayal with a meeting? She bowed her head, tears threatening. I know I messed up, but we have children. They're not mine, Clayton snapped, bitterness lacing his words. DNA says so. You used me as a cover, manipulated me into a vasectomy. You let Miles father your kids behind my back. And Harriet helped. So don't talk to me about our children. Nicole placed a hand gently on Clayton's forearm, guiding him to take a measured breath. Then she addressed Valerie's attorney. Here are our conditions. Full disestablishment of paternity for Emma and Jake. No spousal support or alimony. Complete forfeiture of any claim to my client's assets, including the home, the engineering firm shares, and any future earnings. A formal admission of adultery in the divorce decree. Valerie's eyes brimmed with tears. Her attorney swallowed. This is quite harsh. Miss Reed did contribute to the household for years. She handled childcare. Clayton barked a humorless laugh. Childcare for kids that aren't even mine, and she had Miles's money. Let's not forget Harriet's hush funds. Don't try to spin it like I owe her anything. The attorney lifted her hands in a placating gesture. Look, we realize paternity disestablishment might be a given, but these kids know Clayton as their father. At minimum, we'd like to propose a transitional plan for emotional support, regular visitation, or therapy to ease them into this new reality. He stiffened. Visitation? Emotional support? Are you out of your mind? She's the one who created this nightmare. I've done nothing but be a decent father, unaware that they're not mine. Now you want me to keep playing caretaker? Valerie spoke, voice trembling. They love you, Clay. They don't understand any of this. I'm begging you, for them, if not for me. He stared hard at her. You should have thought about that before you cheated. Nicole placed a hand on the table. My client is not obligated to provide fatherly care for children proven not to be his. If Miss Reed wants therapy or help for them, she can fund it. My client's stance is clear. Valerie's tears finally spilled. Her attorney exhaled, shuffling papers. All right, we'll sign the paternity disestablishment. We won't contest no spousal support. But regarding the house, Valerie has nowhere to go. Perhaps a short timeline for her to vacate, or assistance in renting a place? Clayton stared at them in contempt. She can stay with Harriet or Miles. She had no problem receiving Miles's money all this time. Why not rely on that? Nicole nodded. Exactly. If Miss Reed wishes to remain in the family home temporarily, my client can consider a 30-day grace period, provided she pays the utilities. After that, the house is to be sold or refinanced. The proceeds belong to my client. She looked at Clayton, who gave a curt nod, granting a bare minimum concession to expedite matters. Valerie sniffled. Thank you, Clay. He refused to meet her eyes. Don't thank me. I just want this over with. The attorneys continued hashing out details. A timeline for finalizing the divorce decree, the wording about paternity, disclaimers about future child support from Miles, if any. When it ended, Valerie approached him timidly, as if about to speak more personally. He stood, turning his back, gathering his coat. Nicole intervened, giving Valerie a chilly smile. We'll be in touch with final documents. He walked out, shoulders tense, refusing to look back. Once in the hallway, he drew a shaky breath. This was progress. He'd effectively cut her off from everything, yet the cost weighed on him like a boulder. Stay strong, Clay. Don't let guilt seep in. She'd done this to herself. The only pity he felt was for Emma and Jake, trapped in the chaos. But that sorrow wouldn't keep him from finishing what he started. That evening, he found an email from Harriet's attorney demanding retraction of the defamatory slideshow he showed at her birthday. Nicole had already drafted a scathing response, pointing out the truthfulness of the evidence. Harriet insisted she'd never knowingly deceived him about the children's parentage. She blamed Valerie entirely, but the phone recordings proved Harriet and Miles conspired. Hush money was real. Nicole told him Harriet's legal position was weak. Clayton read the drafts, a sense of grim satisfaction twisting his lips. Harriet, once so powerful and arrogant, was cornered. He typed a one-line reply, proceed with maximum pressure, then closed his laptop, feeling a flicker of relief. He'd spent months living in suspicion, heartbreak. Now at least he had the upper hand. Still, the moral swamp of fatherhood lingered. After changing into sweats, he stared at himself in the hotel bathroom mirror. His reflection showed dark circles under weary eyes. Memories flashed, Emma's giggle when they played hide-and-seek, Jake's sleepy voice asking for Daddy at night. Should I just vanish from their lives? He pushed the question aside. Not tonight. He needed rest. The next day, he'd meet with Warren to finalize the trust details. Then he'd see about a strategy to handle Miles. The man deserved his own brand of vengeance. The next morning, Warren greeted him at a downtown cafe. The city bustled outside the windows, traffic humming, people rushing in suits, backpacks, or casual attire. Clayton clutched his coffee, eyes scanning a newspaper on the table. The scandal had partly leaked to local gossip columns. Prominent developers' alleged affair and paternity scandal shocks high society. Harriet's name was mentioned. Miles's stock was rumored to be plummeting amid the negative press. Valerie's name was also thrown around, though not with the same flamboyant detail. Warren tapped the paper. Quite the storm you've created, Clay. He shrugged, sipping the coffee that tasted too bitter. They deserve it. Every last bit. Agreed. I just hope you're ready for any retaliation. Miles might try to drag you into depositions, accuse you of hacking or illegally obtaining those photos. Clayton snorted. Let him try. We can prove we got them from marital property, from a phone in my house. He set his cup down. What about Harriet? Warren pulled out some documents, sliding them over. Nicole's preparing a civil suit for aiding and abetting fraud. Harriet's net worth is high, but her public image is more valuable to her. She might settle quickly to avoid a drawn-out case. She's already losing face after the party fiasco. Clayton scanned the papers. This is good. Pressure from all sides. He paused, voice softening. I want to clarify something with you, though. If the kids end up in Miles's custody, eventually is there a chance Harriet tries to forcibly keep me in the father role to shield Miles? That's insane, right? Warren exhaled. Legally, with the DNA results, you can walk away. Harriet has no standing to force you. If Miles is the real father, it's on him. Harriet's influence might push for something else, but the law is clear. You're not on the birth certificates once they're amended, and you can disclaim paternity entirely. Clayton nodded slowly. Part of him felt a twinge of guilt Emma and Jake had no idea how their world might change. But logic reminded him. He'd been used as a scapegoat. He forced away the sentiment. The kids were Miles's responsibility now, if he even wanted them. God, these are real children, not pawns. The tragedy stung, but it wasn't his burden anymore. Warren tapped the papers again. We'll see Harriet's next move. She might make a settlement offer soon. Meanwhile, focus on finalizing your divorce terms. Once that's done, you'll be legally free. Clayton let out a breath. Yes, free. That's exactly what I want, even if it felt like an empty victory. They parted ways. Clayton returned to the office, burying himself in engineering tasks to keep his mind from wandering. The illusions of family and fatherhood had crashed down. All that remained was a scorched path to retribution and eventual release. That evening, he found the old messages from Harriet on his phone. Some part of him wanted to re-listen, to glean any detail that might deepen her liability. He pressed play on one particularly nasty voicemail, Harriet's aristocratic tone dripping with venom. Clayton, you ungrateful whelp, after everything Valerie's done for you, you dare humiliate us? My connections will ruin you. Mark my words. He grimaced. Harriet's arrogance was galling. She'd clearly never expected him to fight back. In another message, Harriet attempted a more conciliatory approach, claiming, I was only trying to protect the children. You'll regret causing this scandal. The hypocrisy made him want to hurl the phone across the room. He forwarded these recordings to Nicole with a note, potential evidence of harassment, threats. Then he turned off the phone, feeling drained. This entire fiasco was devouring his life, leaving him lonely in a drab hotel suite. He rummaged through a takeout menu, deciding he had no appetite to go anywhere. Is this who I am now, just a man fueled by revenge, living in a hotel? A fleeting thought of seeking personal counseling crossed his mind, but he dismissed it. I don't need therapy. I just need to end this hell. Once the divorce was final, Harriet was publicly shamed, and Miles was forced to pay for fathering the children. Maybe then he could start over. Maybe. A day later, Nicole called with an update. Harriet's attorney wanted to meet. No cameras, no leaks, presumably to discuss settlement. They wanted hush-hush. If you agree, we can see what they're offering, Nicole explained. Up to you. Clayton considered. Harriet was cunning, likely to propose a large sum in exchange for dropping the lawsuits and publicly retracting the humiliating claims. Did he want money, or did he want a thorough public thrashing? Let's see what she offers, he finally said. But I won't retract the truth or apologize for exposing it. Nicole concurred. Understood. I'll set up a meeting. Also, I just got word Miles is forging a statement that the kids may not be his, either that Valerie might have had multiple lovers. He's probably trying to dodge paternity. Be ready for that curveball. Clayton's jaw tightened. Coward. He's the father, and we all know it. The notion that Miles would throw Valerie under the bus to avoid child support ironically gave Clayton a grim satisfaction. Let them cannibalize each other. He ended the call, gazing at the cityscape through his office window. So Harriet wants to buy me off. Miles wants to disclaim fatherhood. Valerie is left in ruin. It was all descending into a fiasco that validated every step of his revenge, yet he couldn't shake the hollowness that came from seeing the human cost. Nicole arranged the private meeting with Harriet's attorney at a discreet venue, a small, upscale boardroom in a boutique law office that Harriet likely owned or had ties to. Clayton arrived with Nicole in the late afternoon. The air outside was crisp, an early sign of the approaching fall. Inside, plush carpets and soft lighting tried to convey an atmosphere of civility. Harriet was already there, wearing a polished gray suit, pearls around her neck, hair meticulously styled. She barely looked at Clayton, focusing instead on Nicole. Her attorney, a balding man with watchful eyes, sat by her side. Clayton noticed Harriet's posture, rigid, lips pressed thin. She was bracing for confrontation. Nicole spoke first. "Mrs. Stanhope, using Harriet's last name, we understand you have a settlement offer regarding the civil suit Mr. Reed is preparing." Harriet drew a measured breath, addressing Nicole rather than Clayton. "Yes, I see no reason this fiasco should continue in the courts. It's all quite humiliating for everyone." Clayton almost scoffed. Humiliating? For you, sure. For me, it was betrayal. But he stayed silent, letting Nicole lead. Harriet's attorney cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to offer a substantial sum $250,000 to Mr. Reed in exchange for him dropping any lawsuit against her, ceasing public defamation, and signing a non-disclosure about her alleged involvement." Nicole's expression remained neutral. $250,000. That's your best figure? Harriet cut in sharply. "Yes, and I think it's more than generous. Clayton isn't exactly destitute. This entire scandal is about Valerie and Miles. My role was minimal, if any. I simply took care of my great-grandchildren." Clayton couldn't hold back. "Minimal? You took money from Miles to keep me in the dark. You gave them cover to cheat. You're as guilty as they are." Harriet's nostrils flared. "I was protecting Valerie, and those children, I might add. Had I known you'd be so vengeful, I'd have told her to divorce you quietly long ago." Nicole placed a hand lightly on Clayton's forearm, a silent signal to remain calm. Then she turned to Harriet's attorney. "Here's the issue. We have clear evidence Harriet accepted financial benefits in exchange for deceiving my client, which contributed to paternity fraud. That's not minimal involvement. My client suffered emotional and psychological harm, not to mention the public embarrassment caused by Harriet's duplicity." Harriet's attorney attempted a placating tone. "Mr. Reed, consider how long you've known Harriet. She's been in Valerie's life forever. She only wanted what was best for her family. Perhaps she made errors of judgment, but do you truly want a drawn-out court battle?" Clayton's jaw clenched. "Harriet never cared about my well-being. She cared about Miles's money. As for a court battle, if it humiliates Harriet, so be it." Harriet stiffened. "You vindictive little." Nicole snapped her gaze to Harriet. "Insults won't help. Now, regarding the figure, $250 is low. My client's damages are extensive, and the hush money Harriet took from Miles was rumored to be significantly higher over the years. We suspect she can afford more." Harriet glared. "I won't be extorted." Clayton ground his teeth. "It's not extortion when we're seeking damages for your active role in a massive fraud. If you prefer court, let's do it. I have recordings, text messages, bank records linking you to Miles's hush payments." She blanched momentarily, glancing at her attorney. He shifted uncomfortably. "Let's not be hasty. We could consider adjusting the sum." Harriet shot him a furious look, but he pressed on, likely knowing they needed to negotiate. Nicole settled back. "Our opening demand was $500,000. That's still modest considering the emotional toll. But if Harriet insists on a non-disclosure agreement, we might discuss a figure near that." $500,000, Harriet sputtered. "Aye, that's outrageous." Clayton kept his gaze locked on her. "You think that's more outrageous than what you did to me? I lost 2 children I thought were mine, lost my marriage, and you let me pay for everything while Miles played father behind my back." Her face went ashen. She clasped her pearls, lips trembling. Finally, in a tight voice, Harriet's attorney said, "We'll need to confer privately. This is quite the demand." Nicole gave a curt nod. "Take your time. My client and I can step out for a few minutes." They rose, walking to the hallway. Nicole glanced at Clayton approvingly. "You handled yourself well. Harriet's used to bullying. She sees we won't back down." Clayton exhaled, feeling a flicker of relief that Nicole was guiding him. "I want them all to suffer. But if $500,000 ensures Harriet shuts up and slinks away, Maybe it's worth it. Nicole brushed imaginary lint off her blazer. Precisely. Money's just a side effect. The real satisfaction is seeing her forced to pay for her role. We still keep the public record of her involvement unless we sign a non-disclosure that limits further statements. But the party fiasco is already out there. She can't erase that. Clayton nodded. Yes, let her spin in her own web. After about 10 minutes, Harriet's attorney opened the door, beckoning them back. Harriet's expression was pinched, her gaze skittering away from Clayton's. She spoke grudgingly. We'll settle at $400,000, with a non-disclosure clause preventing you from publicly discussing my role beyond what's already out there. Nicole turned to Clayton, arching an eyebrow. He considered. They'd come in at $500,000. Harriet countered with $250, now $400. It was a decent compromise. He didn't need the money, thanks to his asset protection, but forcing Harriet to part with that sum was symbolic. All right, he said calmly, $400,000 plus legal fees, and we don't speak about Harriet's hush money in new press statements. But I won't retract anything. Understood? Harriet bristled but nodded once. Fine. They sealed the agreement. Harriet's attorney promised the funds would be wired within 2 weeks. Nicole would handle the details. Harriet remained silent, staring at her manicured hands. Clayton felt no pity. She'd reaped what she sowed. As they left, Harriet called after him softly. Clayton, I never intended for it to go this far. He paused at the door, glancing over his shoulder. You're right. You intended it to stay hidden. Now it's not. He walked out without waiting for her response. Outside, the sky was overcast, reflecting Clayton's mood gray and heavy. He half expected to feel elation at cornering Harriet into a hefty settlement. Instead, he felt a gnawing hollowness. This is what revenge looks like: quiet deals behind closed doors, money changing hands, no real atonement. Nicole parted ways with him at the curb, reminding him to come by her office next week to finalize the paperwork. He nodded and slipped into his car. He sat there for a moment, engine off, letting the hush of the street wash over him. Even with Harriet settling, Miles was still out there, likely scheming to escape child support or disown the kids. And Valerie, he still needed to finalize the divorce decree. He turned the key, the engine purring, and pulled into traffic. The city felt suffocating. He spotted a familiar diner sign and decided spontaneously to stop for a coffee. Maybe a dose of normalcy could steady his nerves. The diner was a cozy spot, gleaming in neon signage. The interior smelled of frying bacon, coffee, and sugar. Clayton slid into a booth, ignoring the flickering overhead light. A waitress approached with a polite smile. Coffee? Please, he murmured. The waitress departed, soon returning with a steaming mug. He sat there, inhaling the aroma, letting it calm him. He half wished he had a friend or companion to talk to. Warren was supportive, but everything felt so clinical with lawyers and lawsuits. His mind flashed back to a time when he and Valerie used to frequent a diner after late-night movies. They'd chat for hours about everything: life, dreams, kids, all illusions, he reminded himself bitterly. He sipped the coffee. A couple across the aisle laughed over a shared joke, making him realize how lonely he felt. In an odd moment of vulnerability, he wondered if he'd ever trust anyone again. Or was he destined to remain a jaded, solitary figure? Before he could sink further into that gloom, his phone buzzed with a text from Warren. Heard Harriet settled. Good job. Miles's new stance is that Valerie had multiple lovers, so he isn't paying child support unless she paternity tests him. That'll be another show. Clayton read it twice, a mirthless laugh escaping his lips. So Miles is doubling down on the scumbag routine. He typed back, serves them right. I'm done being any part of that fiasco. He shoved the phone away, finishing his coffee. Enough negativity for one day. He tossed a tip on the table and exited the diner, vowing to find some semblance of peace eventually. The next major hurdle was finalizing the divorce decree. Nicole had hammered out the draft, including disclaimers about paternity, no spousal support, a 30-day window for Valerie to vacate the house, and a statement admitting adultery. Valerie's attorney had returned a slightly redlined version, mostly minor details, but the key points remained. On a drizzly Wednesday morning, Clayton stepped into the county courthouse for a scheduled hearing to present their settlement to a judge. The halls were busy with lawyers, litigants, bored onlookers. He felt a pang remembering that he and Valerie once stood in a similar hall for their marriage license, excited and naive. In the assigned courtroom, Nicole guided him to a front bench. Valerie was already there, sitting with her attorney, eyes downcast. They hardly acknowledged each other. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern but kind face, called the case. Nicole presented the settlement. The judge asked pointed questions, particularly about the kids, and whether they'd have any claim on Clayton's finances. Nicole explained the DNA evidence, and that the father was believed to be Miles Chapman. Valerie's attorney confirmed. The judge looked troubled. That's unfortunate for the children, but if they're not Mr. Reed's, the law can't force him into paternal obligations. Miss Reed, you understand the consequences of signing this? Valerie's voice trembled. Yes, Your Honor. She glanced at Clayton, her eyes brimming with tears. I do. The judge nodded, flipping through pages, then asked them both standard questions about no coercion, full knowledge. Finally, with a curt rap of her gavel on the desk, she said, Then this court grants your divorce under these terms, effective immediately. Clayton's stomach lurched. That's it, 8 years of marriage undone in minutes. The judge rose, moving on to the next case, and that was that. Valerie slowly approached, her eyes searching his face. Clay, can we talk outside? He considered refusing, but some part of him wanted closure. He nodded stiffly, following her into the corridor. Nicole hung back to finalize paperwork with the court clerk. Valerie leaned against the gray wall, hugging herself. She looked hollowed out, eyes rimmed red. We're really done, she whispered, voice catching. Clayton stood a foot away, arms crossed. Yeah, we are. She swallowed. I never thought it'd end like this hatred, lawsuits, you wanting me gone. He let out a harsh laugh. What did you expect? You lied about our children's paternity for years, and you let Harriet get involved, took advantage of me financially, emotionally. She wiped a tear. It wasn't always a lie, Clay. When we started, I loved you. The affair with Miles, it happened after Emma was born. I didn't plan it, I got caught up. Harriet encouraged it. She said Miles could provide so much. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was too late. Clayton's chest felt tight. So Emma might be mine if the affair started after her birth, right? She hesitated, looking away. Miles and we were together just once before Emma was born. I'm sorry, I can't say for sure. I didn't want to test her. She sees you as her dad. It all spiraled out of control. He sighed, bitterness flaring. That's your logic? That's your apology? You let me walk blind into a vasectomy. Let me keep paying for everything. Let Harriet hush it all up. You had 1,000 chances to come clean. Tears slid down her cheeks. I was scared. I messed up. I have no excuse. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Well, it's over now. We've signed the papers. I guess you'll rely on Miles, or Harriet, or whoever. I'm done. She reached for him instinctively, but he stepped back. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she whispered. But for what it's worth, I'm sorry for everything I cost you. He said nothing, turning away. Her pain no longer moved him. He walked down the corridor, leaving her behind, each step echoing with finality. Part of him felt a faint echo of the love they once shared, but it was drowned by the magnitude of her betrayal. Nicole emerged from the clerk's office, nodding at him. All set. You're officially a free man. Clayton glanced over his shoulder, seeing Valerie still slumped against the wall. Then he faced forward. Yeah, let's go. They exited the courthouse into a hazy midday light. Clayton inhaled, feeling a swirl of relief and emptiness. The marriage was legally dead, the property was his alone, and Valerie had a strict timeline to move out. The kids, well, they were no longer legally his responsibility. Another piece of the puzzle was in place. Nicole touched his arm. I can handle distributing the final documents. If Valerie tries any antics, we have the order. And Harriet's settlement is nearly ready. You're close to finishing this chapter. He gave a tight nod. Thank you for everything. She smiled sympathetically. Sometimes the end of a messy relationship is the start of something better. Focus on your future now. He tried to muster a grateful smile. Yeah, I will. After parting ways, he drifted through the city streets, mind-numb. Valerie's tearful regret replayed in his head, but he clenched his jaw. Don't get sucked in. She had years to correct her course. She never did. Now it was done. He pulled out his phone, tapping Warren's number. When Warren picked up, Clayton murmured, "Divorce is final." Warren congratulated him, promising they'd celebrate. "Not sure it's something to celebrate," Clayton said quietly. But maybe a quiet drink with a friend was needed. That evening, Clayton and Warren found themselves in a dimly lit bar near the engineering firm. They sat in a corner booth, each nursing a whiskey on the rocks. The bartender's slow jazz playlist hummed overhead, blending with the low chatter of patrons. Clayton stared at the amber liquid, swirling it absently. "End of an era," Warren observed. "You're free, man. No more double life." Clayton let out a dry chuckle. "Yeah, free to start from scratch. My house feels tainted. My name is splashed in gossip columns as the scorned husband. I can't even look at pictures of the kids without feeling sick." Warren's gaze softened. "I get it. You lost a lot. But you also dodged a bigger bullet. Imagine if they kept lying for decades." Clayton nodded grimly. "True. The betrayal would have only grown." He sipped the whiskey, letting its burn cut through his numbness. "Still, I can't shake the sense that everything I believed about my life was just illusions." Warren considered. "Have you thought about therapy? Someone unbiased to help you process?" Clayton shook his head. "I can't bring myself to. I keep thinking I'm an engineer. I solve problems logically. This is just another set of problems." "You're also human, Clay. Betrayal stings deeper than any blueprint glitch." Warren exhaled. "But I won't push. Just know, if you need to talk, I'm here." They fell into companionable silence. After a moment, Clayton ventured, "What about Miles? He's the father, but apparently claiming Valerie had other lovers. He might just get off scot-free, refusing child support unless proven otherwise. I can't stand the idea of him walking away from the mess he made." Warren shrugged. "Valerie can push for a court-ordered paternity test. If Miles is truly the father, he'll be forced to pay. But that's her fight, not yours." A bitter smirk crossed Clayton's lips. "Guess so. I just hope she nails him to the wall. He deserves it." They clinked glasses lightly. Warren changed the subject, asking about new projects at the engineering firm. Clayton latched onto it eagerly, grateful for a distraction. For a few minutes, he forgot about divorces, hush money, and heartbreak. They talked load-bearing beams, expansion proposals, the firm's growing reputation. It was a small reprieve, though the overshadowing pain remained, lurking at the edges of his mind. Eventually, he parted ways with Warren, stepping into the chilly night. The city lights gleamed on damp pavement. He looked up at the sky, inhaling the crisp air. Divorce final, Harriet settled. Miles on the run, he had set these dominoes in motion. Now, for the first time since discovering that fateful piece of foil in his bathroom, he saw a glimmer of possibility. The road to healing was long, but at least the worst was behind him, hopefully. With the divorce done, Clayton turned his attention back to day-to-day life. He decided to check on the old house, see if Valerie had started moving out. The final hearing had given her 30 days. She still had over 3 weeks, but he dreaded the idea that she might stall or cause more trouble. He parked in the driveway, noticing a moving truck partially blocking the garage. Inside, he found piles of boxes in the living room. Valerie was bent over a cardboard box, sealing it with tape. She looked up, startled, then quickly wiped her eyes. I'm just packing." He nodded stiffly. "That's what the order says." She paused, glancing around the half-empty room. "I should be done in a couple of weeks. Harriet's letting me store some things at her place until I figure out what's next." He scanned the barren shelves, the missing pictures. This was the house they'd shared, once full of laughter. Now it felt hollow. "Fine," he said quietly. "I came to see if you left anything that's mine." She pointed to a small table. "Some of your old notebooks, a few knickknacks. I wasn't sure what you wanted to keep." He approached, flipping through the notebooks. Sketches of early structural designs, personal doodles, memories of a younger, more hopeful self. He felt an ache, yet he kept his face impassive. Thanks. Valerie stood there, awkward. Can I ask, do you plan on seeing Emma and Jake again? They keep asking about you. Clayton hesitated, struggling to maintain composure. I don't know. Maybe when all this is settled. Right now, it's too raw. She nodded, tears threatening. I understand. They miss you. He said nothing, biting back a wave of emotion. Instead, he took the box of his belongings and turned to leave. You have my attorney's number if anything comes up. As he walked away, he heard her muffled sob, but he forced himself not to look back. This was the path he'd chosen. They had forced him onto it. Every step forward felt like trudging through shards of the past, but at least each step was his, no longer manipulated by Harriet or Miles or the illusions of fatherhood. Late that night, he found himself replaying old videos on his phone, Emma's 3rd birthday, Jake's first steps footage he'd taken with pure fatherly joy. The betrayal twisted inside him like a knife. He closed the video app, tears burning. Damn it. In frustration, he rummaged in a desk drawer for sleeping pills. He rarely used them, but the insomnia was relentless. Downing a half dose, he slumped onto the hotel bed, waiting for the sedation to wash over him. A soft beep signaled a new email. He almost ignored it, but curiosity won. The subject line, "From Miles Chapman, your lawsuit." Clayton's pulse kicked up. He opened it. Miles's tone was smug, claiming that Valerie's multiple affairs invalidated her attempts to pin paternity on him. He threatened a countersuit if Clayton continued to implicate him in fraudulent fatherhood. He ended with, "Back off, or I'll ensure you regret it." Clayton stared, anger flaring. Miles had the audacity to blame everything on Valerie, even hinting at hooking her up with other men. It was vile. He hammered out a quick reply. "Send your threats to my lawyer. I have every intention of seeing your downfall through. If you are the father, you'll pay. Don't contact me directly again." He hit send, heart pounding with renewed fury. The sedation began to tug at his consciousness, and he let his phone drop. Miles was cornered. Harriet had settled. Valerie was out. The only question was how nasty Miles's next move would be. Clayton closed his eyes, sinking into restless half-sleep. The war raged on, but he was determined to see it to the bitter end. Sunrise found him groggy, still wearing last night's shirt, phone buzzing with a message from Nicole. "Just saw Miles's email. Standard intimidation. Don't engage further. We'll handle it." He replied with a curt, "Okay." He rose, showered, and changed into fresh clothes. As he studied his reflection in the mirror, he noted the lines of fatigue around his eyes. This was the face of a man who'd toppled illusions, hammered Harriet into a settlement, divorced a cheating wife. He'd won, if you could call it that. But the cost was immeasurable. The future stretched before him like a blank page, marred only by Miles's final wriggles. One day at a time, he told himself. One day at a time. Clayton sat in a small coffee shop, swirling a latte absent-mindedly. It was mid-morning, a relatively quiet time, just a few college students typing on laptops and an older couple reading newspapers. He needed a break from the stifling atmosphere of the office and the oppressive solitude of the hotel. Something about the gentle buzz of strangers' conversation felt oddly comforting, reminding him life moved on regardless of his personal turmoil. He'd spent the last few days reviewing final settlement documents with Nicole. Harriet had begun the wire transfer for the $400,000. The divorce decree was entered. Valerie was slowly vacating the house. Legally, everything was nearing closure. Yet Miles's threats loomed, and the emotional crater left by losing his kids weighed on him. He sipped the latte and glanced out the window. He spotted a mother with 2 small children pass by, the younger one tugging at her skirt, the older skipping along. His chest tightened. He couldn't help picturing Emma and Jake. Were they adjusting to his absence? Did Miles step in as father, or was he still dodging paternity tests? The thought set his jaw on edge. He shouldn't care, but he did, at least for Emma and Jake's sake. A chime signaled the coffee shop door opening. He looked up absently, then froze. It was Nicole scanning the room. Their eyes met, and she gave him a polite wave, making her way to his table. "Coincidence?" he asked, half smiling. She shrugged, placing her briefcase down. "I sometimes come here between court appearances. Didn't expect to see you, though." He gestured for her to sit. "Take a seat if you're not in a hurry." Nicole nodded. "Sure. "Another latte, please," she told the passing barista. Then she turned to Clayton, studying him carefully. "You look less tense than before. Are you starting to decompress?" He smirked. "Trying. Harriet's settlement is basically done. Valerie's moving out. I guess my life is simpler in a twisted way." Nicole leaned forward, lowering her voice. "And how are you? Outside of the legal stuff?" He rubbed his neck. "I appreciate you asking. Honestly, still messed up. I find myself missing the kids, but they're not mine, right? I keep telling myself that. Meanwhile, Miles is posturing. I worry that maybe he'll drag me into some new fiasco." Nicole tapped the table gently. "He might try, but legally you're solid. You have your evidence. If Valerie sues Miles for child support, that's between them. You're out of it. And Harriet's no threat after she signs that settlement. So from a legal standpoint, you're in the clear." Clayton exhaled a shaky sigh. "Maybe the rest is just me dealing with the emotional fallout. Time and I don't know. Maybe therapy, like Warren keeps suggesting." Nicole nodded, a sympathetic look in her eyes. "It could help. You've been through an extreme betrayal. No shame in seeking professional help, or at least leaning on friends." He forced a chuckle. "I might need to. I'm not as stoic as I pretend." Their conversation drifted to lighter topics: her upcoming vacation, his firm's new projects. For a moment, he almost forgot the heartbreak. When Nicole's latte arrived, they clinked mugs, a quiet camaraderie passing between them. She had been more than just his lawyer. She'd guided him through the darkest period of his life with unwavering competence. Finally, she stood, gathering her briefcase. "I have to get back to court. You hang in there, Clayton. And if you need anything legal or otherwise, just call." He nodded. "Thanks, Nicole, for everything." She offered a small, genuine smile. "That's what I'm here for." Then she was gone, leaving the faint smell of perfume in the air. Clayton lingered, finishing his latte in reflective silence. That afternoon, back at the engineering firm, Clayton found a large envelope on his desk. It bore Harriet's attorney's letterhead. Inside, confirmation that the settlement funds were officially transferred. A cashier's check was included for the remainder. So it's done, he thought, placing the check aside. 400 grand from Harriet, a symbol of her guilt. He had no illusions that money could mend the emotional wreckage, but it was a tangible token of her defeat. He locked the check in a drawer, deciding he'd deposit it later. He still had to figure out what to do with that sum, maybe invest it or stash it in the trust. The idea of spending Harriet's hush money payback on something frivolous felt distasteful. Perhaps he'd funnel it into something constructive, like scholarships for kids who needed help. The irony of using Harriet's money to help children who'd actually deserved support appealed to him. "I'll think on it." Midday, he received a text from Warren. "Lunch? I'm downtown." Clayton agreed. The more normal interactions he had, the better. They met at a bustling sandwich shop. Warren appeared cheerful, congratulating him on Harriet's settlement. "You've systematically dismantled them all, Harriet. Miles is next," Warren joked. Clayton smiled wryly. "I think Miles is dismantling himself. Heard rumors his company might push him out if the negative publicity continues." Warren took a bite of his sandwich, nodding. "No big shock. Investors hate scandal. And if Valerie eventually proves he's the kid's father, that's child support he can't squirm out of." Clayton shrugged. "Let him squirm. I won't lift a finger to help or hinder. I'm done with them." Warren gave him a curious look. "You sure you're truly done? Something about your tone says you still have residual anger." Clayton stared at the half-eaten sandwich on his plate. "Anger? Sure, it's there, but I'm exhausted. Harriet paid me off. Valerie's out of my life. Miles, unless he tries to come after me, I won't chase him. I have no reason to stay entangled." Warren raised a brow. "That's surprisingly zen of you." Clayton exhaled. "I want my life back, you know? I'm not some vengeful monster. I just refuse to be a doormat." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "But if Miles tries anything, I won't hesitate." Warren nodded. "Fair enough. Just be cautious. In these last phases, people sometimes do crazy things out of desperation." Clayton agreed. They chatted about mundane topics, the conversation drifting to sports and random office gossip. The sense of normalcy eased some tension in Clayton's chest. He realized how starved he was for everyday banter that didn't revolve around betrayal and legal warfare. By the time they parted ways, his mood had lifted slightly. Late that evening in his hotel room, Clayton scanned real estate listings on his laptop. He couldn't stand the thought of staying in that house tainted by lies, but he also didn't want to live in a hotel forever. The divorce decree let him keep the property, but he planned to sell it once Valerie moved out. Then maybe he'd buy a new place somewhere that didn't echo with ghosts of Emma and Jake's laughter. He bookmarked a couple of condo listings downtown, then scrolled aimlessly. The process felt surreal. A few months ago, he considered that house the perfect home for a growing family. Now he was starting over alone. A pang of loneliness gnawed at him. He shut the laptop and paced. The soft hum of traffic outside lulled him into reverie, memories flickering in his mind. First Christmas with Emma, Jake's bedtime giggles, all overshadowed by the fact they were fathered by another man, a nauseating swirl of longing and betrayal. He grabbed his phone, nearly dialed a therapist's number from a recommendation website, but the impulse dried up as soon as he recalled the idea of reliving every painful detail to a stranger. Instead, he texted Warren, "You free for a beer?" Warren replied he had a date night planned. "Ah, no problem. Enjoy." Clayton sighed, dropping onto the bed. He turned on the TV, letting the mindless chatter numb his thoughts until sleep claimed him. Days passed in a subdued rhythm. The engineering firm thrived, ironically providing Clayton with a sense of control. Clients remained impressed with his meticulous approach. His partners, Randall and Charles, had noticed his personal upheaval but politely avoided prying. Clayton appreciated their discretion. He poured his energy into designing robust structures, triple-checking calculations as if trying to fortify his life by proxy. Valerie quietly moved out. Nicole informed him that Valerie's attorney confirmed the house would be empty within 2 weeks. He visited it once more to confirm progress, stepping through echoing rooms stripped of furniture. The walls still bore faint outlines where family photos had hung, now removed. "Another week or so and I'll list it for sale," he resolved. He occasionally scrolled through local therapy listings. Something about the stages of grief after betrayal came up on an online forum. He recognized feelings of denial, anger, depression swirling inside him. He could tick them off like items on a blueprint checklist. Yet he never followed through with an appointment. One evening, Nicole emailed him a final statement on Harriet's settlement. She included a personal note. "Consider taking time to heal. Money won't fix heartbreak, but it can fund a fresh start." He almost laughed at her frankness. She was right. No sum of money would patch the hole in his chest. Then a phone call from an unknown number rattled him. "Clayton, it's me," came a woman's voice. His stomach lurched. Valerie? But no, it wasn't her. "This is Heidi, from the diner, remember?" He frowned. Heidi, oh yes, the waitress from that 24-hour diner he used to frequent after late nights at the office months ago. They'd chatted occasionally, but he'd been too distracted by his home drama. "Heidi, right, hi." He was perplexed at her calling him. "Is everything okay?" She hesitated. "I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but you left your business card once, remember, when you said if there was ever a shift I needed a side hustle or something. I'm so sorry if I misunderstood." Clayton rubbed his forehead, vaguely recalling he'd mentioned his firm was hiring interns or something along those lines. Yes, I remember. I said we sometimes look for administrative help." "Right?" She exhaled in relief. "Exactly. Look, I'm in a bind. I can't cover my college tuition next semester if I don't find a better-paying job soon. The diner isn't cutting it. I saw your card in my wallet and thought maybe I could ask if your office has anything. I know it's a shot in the dark." Clayton paused, mind swirling. He wasn't in hiring manager mode, but he recalled the firm occasionally took on part-time clerks or assistants. "Well, I can't promise anything, but let me check with HR. We might have a part-time position. You're in school, right?" "Yes, finishing my second year. I'm majoring in business. I need something more stable. Sorry to bother you." He realized she sounded anxious. "No bother at all. Let me talk to HR. I'll let you know in a day or two, okay?" She sighed, relieved. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. I appreciate it. And if not, I understand." They exchanged quick goodbyes. He hung up, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction at the normalcy of that conversation, someone needing a job, him potentially offering help. It was refreshing to be reminded there were problems in the world that didn't revolve around infidelity. I'll see if we can help her out, he thought. It might do me good too, focusing on something else. Sure enough, the next day, HR confirmed they had an opening for a front desk administrative position, part-time. He got the details, called Heidi to set up an interview. She arrived at the firm. Clayton glimpsed her from his office window, recognizing her from the diner. She seemed nervous, wearing a modest blouse and skirt, clutching a folder. He told HR to handle the initial screening, trying not to interfere with the process. He didn't want to show favoritism, but part of him hoped she'd get it. Something about helping a struggling student felt worthwhile. Later, HR gave him a positive report. She's surprisingly organized and bright. We'll offer her the job. Clayton passed on the news. Heidi was ecstatic, thanking him profusely. He insisted it was purely her own merits. She seemed both excited and anxious about the new responsibility. That small victory added a spark to his day. In the midst of a personal wasteland, he'd done something kind. It doesn't fix my life, he thought, but it's a step toward normalcy, helping someone in a genuine way. A few days later, Heidi started at the firm. Clayton mostly left her to it, occasionally passing by the front desk to see her diligently answering calls, filing paperwork. She smiled warmly whenever she spotted him, a grateful flicker in her eyes. He'd nod back, feeling a subtle boost. It was nice to see a friendly face unconnected to the heartbreak. At lunch breaks, she sometimes ventured to chat with him about work processes, curious about the engineering side. He found himself explaining concepts in layman's terms. She listened intently, offering the occasional self-deprecating joke about not being good at math. Her humility was refreshing compared to the high-stakes drama with Harriet and Valerie. One afternoon, after an especially hectic morning, he came by her desk. "Hey, Heidi, want to grab a quick coffee? My treat. You deserve a break." She seemed surprised, but agreed shyly. They walked across the street to a cafe, chatting about how she was juggling classes and this new job. He learned more of her backstory, a scholarship student from a modest family, working nights at the diner, trying to pay off loans. Despite her challenges, she exuded an optimistic energy that reminded him how battered his own perspective had become. He found her honesty strangely uplifting, yet he remained guarded, aware of the swirling rumors around his personal life. He didn't want to drag an innocent co-worker into his messy orbit, so they kept things friendly, professional. Still, her presence brightened the corridors of the firm, and part of him realized he was drawn to that flicker of positivity. Meanwhile, the final step of revenge, if one could call it that, centered on Miles's potential child support. Rumor had it Valerie had filed a petition to force him to take a paternity test for the kids. Miles publicly claimed he'd do so, but only if she paid for an advanced test. The tabloids occasionally mentioned the scandal, fueling speculation. Clayton avoided reading the gossip in detail, but he gleaned enough to know Miles was in hot water. One evening, while reviewing the hidden camera evidence, which he rarely did anymore, Clayton stumbled across some older footage he'd archived. It showed Miles letting himself into the house while Harriet babysat, hugging Emma as she called him Daddy Miles. The date stamp was months before everything blew up. Clayton swallowed thickly at the memory. Then he saved the clip to a separate drive, a final piece of evidence. If Miles tried to deny paternity, that footage might push him to back down. He deliberated sending it to Valerie, but he refused to communicate with her directly. She had her own lawyer. Instead, he emailed Nicole, just in case Valerie's lawyer needs more evidence for Miles's paternity. Possibly useful, though I'm not volunteering it unless we must. He wasn't eager to help Valerie, but if Miles was trying to dodge fatherhood, it riled Clayton. Let the scumbag pay for his own children. Nicole responded, "Thanks. I'll keep it on file. Up to you whether you want to assist her, though." Clayton stared at the email. Do I want to help Valerie? After everything? But ultimately, it wasn't about her. It was about Miles not escaping consequences. So he told Nicole to discreetly pass it on if it helped. Then he shut down his laptop, more certain than ever that Miles deserved to be pinned to the wall. As the house listing date approached, Clayton contacted a realtor, scheduling a final walkthrough. The stager recommended removing any remaining personal items. Valerie was gone by official notice. She'd left a few days early. The place felt eerily vacant, the echoes of children's voices replaced by silence. He walked from room to room, verifying everything was intact. The house was still nice, just stripped of memories. In the backyard, he paused by the swing set. Emma had learned to pump her legs there, squealing with delight. "She's not yours," a voice in his head reminded. That laughter belonged to someone else's child. He pressed his eyes shut, forcing the wave of anguish down. He marched back inside, completing the final tasks. With the realtor's sign hammered into the front lawn, he left for good. The property would soon be on the market. A chapter closed. The next day, the realtor texted about scheduling showings. Yes, do it. He was done lingering in the past. Life settled into a pattern. Mornings in the hotel, days at the firm, occasional polite exchanges with Heidi that lifted his spirits. He still wrestled with sleepless nights, haunted by lost fatherhood. But the acute crisis had cooled. Harriet was out of his hair. Valerie was an ex-wife. Miles was flailing publicly. One afternoon, Heidi hesitantly invited him to a group outing with some co-workers, a casual dinner at a pizza place. He almost declined, but realized it might be good to socialize. The group included young staff from HR, a couple of interns, Heidi, and one or two mid-level engineers. Clayton, being their boss, felt a bit awkward, but the casual vibe put him at ease. Over pizza and soda, the group laughed, sharing office anecdotes and personal tidbits. Heidi told a funny story about her diner customers, while others teased each other about minor office mishaps. Clayton found himself smiling genuinely for the first time in ages, soaking in the simple camaraderie. No one asked about his personal scandal. Maybe they were discreet, or maybe they'd heard rumors but respected his privacy. He noticed Heidi glancing his way, a warm smile on her lips. He offered a slight grin in return, feeling a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a while: hope. The evening ended with friendly farewells, everyone splitting up. As he walked Heidi to her car, she thanked him. "I appreciate you letting me join the firm. I really needed this job." He shrugged modestly. "You earned it. Keep up the good work." She hesitated, looking at him with quiet empathy. "I know you're going through stuff. If you ever need someone to talk to just as a friend, I'm around." Her cheeks flushed slightly, as if worried she was overstepping. Clayton felt a twinge in his chest. "Thank you, Heidi. That means a lot." He didn't elaborate, but the sincerity in his tone was evident. Her kindness, untainted by the betrayal that had defined his past months, was a balm he hadn't known he needed. She nodded, then they parted ways. As Clayton drove back to the hotel, he replayed the evening's laughter, the easy conversation. A tiny spark of warmth lodged in his heart. Perhaps a life beyond the wreckage was possible. One day at a time, indeed. The next few weeks were relatively peaceful. Clayton immersed himself in the final steps of preparing the old house for sale, meeting prospective buyers, coordinating with the realtor. He accepted an offer slightly above the asking price. Apparently, the market was hot. That stroke of luck lifted some financial burden, though he was already stable thanks to the trust in Harriet's hush money settlement. During this period, he also found himself chatting more with Heidi at work. She proved efficient at her desk job, but also displayed a genuine curiosity about how engineering projects ran. Sometimes, after the office quieted down, they'd linger, discussing her business courses and his experiences starting the firm. The ease of conversation surprised him. She was younger, but she had a serious ambition to improve her life, reminiscent of how he'd felt in his early career. The difference was that she lacked the cynicism he now carried. One evening, he closed out a meeting with a client and stepped into the lobby, noticing Heidi still at her station, sorting paperwork. "You're working late," he commented lightly. She shrugged. "I had an evening class canceled, so I thought I'd catch up on filing. Plus, it helps me stay ahead for tomorrow." He smiled. "Well, don't burn yourself out. If you need a ride, I'm heading out soon." She hesitated, glancing at the clock. "Actually, yeah, that'd be great. My bus route is a nightmare at this hour." They left together, stepping into the cool night air. It felt unexpectedly comfortable walking side by side, the faint glow of streetlights illuminating the sidewalk. Clayton led her to his car, a practical sedan he'd had for years. She seemed a bit shy as she climbed in, carefully placing her bag on her lap. During the drive, she tried not to pry into his personal issues, but her gentle presence invited conversation anyway. "So the house sold, right? Does that mean you'll be looking for a new place?" He nodded. "Yeah, I'm scanning listings. I might just rent a condo for a while until I'm sure what I want." He paused, glancing at her. "I guess your living situation is stable?" She let out a wry laugh. "I share a tiny apartment with 2 other students. It's not exactly luxurious, but it's affordable. At least I can walk to campus." They reached her building, a modest complex near the college. She thanked him, hand on the door handle. "Thanks for the ride, Mr. Reed. I appreciate it." He had grown tired of that formal address. "Call me Clayton," he said gently. "We're co-workers now." A small smile curved her lips. "Okay, Clayton. Have a good night." She exited, waving as she headed to the door. He lingered for a moment, watching her disappear inside. A stirring of unexpected warmth coiled in his chest. Don't read too much into it, he warned himself. She was just a kind soul who'd found a job. But he couldn't deny the quiet solace her presence offered. Meanwhile, rumors swirled that Miles's property development firm was in upheaval. He faced a possible ouster from the board. Clayton tried not to follow the tabloids, but occasionally he'd see a headline, "Chapman child scandal escalates," or "Ex-boss sued for paternity." He gleaned enough to know that Valerie, or her lawyers, had forced Miles into a DNA test that presumably confirmed he was the father of Emma and Jake. If so, Miles owed child support. The scandal tarnished his professional reputation. Ironically, that might have been what Harriet tried to avoid all along by bribing everyone. Clayton no longer felt the acute need to track their downfall. He'd unleashed the avalanche, and it was burying them. Let them sort out the debris. He focused on forging a new life, sporadically scanning rental listings. Yet the idea of living alone, cooking for one, returning to an empty condo at night, he found it disheartening. He weighed the notion of adopting a pet. A dog, maybe. He'd always liked dogs. A companion might alleviate the loneliness. But he hesitated, uncertain if he was stable enough to care for another living being. So he put that idea on hold. One Tuesday evening, Heidi shyly approached him again, this time in the break room. "Some of us are grabbing sushi after work. Want to come?" Clayton checked his watch. He had no pressing plans. "Sure. Why not?" That's how he ended up seated in a trendy sushi bar with Heidi and a couple other younger employees, an IT assistant named Marisol and a junior engineer named Tim. They shared a few rolls, sipped on miso soup, joked about office quirks. Tim teased Clayton about being the big boss, but in a good-natured way. Heidi recounted a funny anecdote about a lost phone call she'd tried to handle. The group's laughter felt genuine. At some point, Tim left to take a phone call. Marisol popped outside for a quick smoke break, leaving Heidi and Clayton alone at the table. She picked at a piece of nigiri, glancing at him curiously. "It's nice to see you smiling more these days." He blinked. "Do I seem that different?" She shrugged. "When I first met you at the diner, you had this weight on your shoulders, like something was eating you up. Now, you seem lighter." He gave a wry smile. "Still sorting through personal stuff, but yeah, guess the worst is behind me." She nodded softly. "I won't pry, I'm glad you're doing better." He studied her face, lit by the restaurant's soft glow. "Thanks, Heidi. You might not realize it, but being around normal, positive people helps me a lot." She blushed. "I'm just me, but I'm happy if it helps." They finished the meal with the others returning, the conversation turning light and casual. As the group dispersed, Heidi rode in Clayton's car again, explaining it was out of his way, but she appreciated the ride. He insisted it was no problem. During the drive, an easy quiet settled between them. The city lights blurred by. She finally spoke, voice soft. "I know we're not super close, but if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm a good listener. And I promise I can keep secrets." His chest constricted with gratitude. "That's kind of you. Maybe one day I'll take you up on that." "Anytime," she said, offering a small smile. At her building, she hesitated, as if wanting to say more, but then simply thanked him and left. Clayton watched her go, warmth flickering within. Maybe there was a future where he could open up to someone again, trust again. He drove off with a subtle sense of hope mingled with lingering caution. Eventually, the old house sale closed. The final papers were signed, and the realtor transferred the proceeds. Clayton felt a grim satisfaction depositing the check, symbolically erasing that piece of his past. He kept a portion aside to pay off the last of any shared debts with Valerie, though there weren't many left after all the financial shielding. The rest he placed in his personal accounts. With Harriet's settlement and the house proceeds, he was quite comfortable. It didn't change the heartbreak, but at least finances were no longer a concern. He found a furnished condo downtown, renting on a month-to-month basis. It was sleek, minimalistic, perched on the 12th floor with a modest balcony. He moved out of the hotel, taking only his clothes and a few personal items. Standing in the condo's living room, he gazed at the skyline through large windows. The city stretched before him, lights twinkling in the dusk. A new start, he told himself. No ghosts here. That night, he slept better than he had in weeks. Work became a welcome routine. Heidi's presence at the front desk remained a small bright spot. She was always polite, but they'd developed a comfortable rapport. Sometimes he'd bring her coffee if he arrived earlier. She teased him about spoiling her. It was an innocent, friendly exchange, yet he realized how much he looked forward to it. One Friday afternoon, as the office was winding down, she approached him timidly. "Clayton, so? I'm heading to a small concert tonight with some friends. One of them bailed last minute. Would you want to come? It's a local band, no big deal, but might be fun." She rushed to add, "Totally cool if you're busy or not into that." Clayton blinked. A local concert with a colleague half his age? He hesitated, but some part of him longed for a social outlet. What kind of music?" "A mix of indie rock, maybe some folk influences, real laid-back vibe. Tickets are cheap, it's standing room in a small venue." He mulled it over. "Yeah, sure, why not?" She lit up. "Awesome. We can meet there or carpool. I don't mind driving, but it's an older car, sometimes finicky." He found himself smiling. "We can carpool in mine, if that's easier." They agreed on a time, exchanging quick details. After finishing up at the office, they parted ways to freshen up. The plan felt spontaneous, maybe slightly out of his comfort zone, but that was exactly why he accepted. "I need to live again," he told himself. The venue was a small, dim club with a makeshift stage at one end. Colored lights swirled overhead, a modest crowd gathering. Heidi led him through the throng to a spot near the side. The band, a trio of scruffy young guys, tuned their instruments. The low hum of conversation filled the room. She introduced him to a couple of her friend's other students, plus a coworker from the diner. They seemed friendly, though a bit curious at Clayton's age. He cracked a mild joke, and they relaxed. The band began playing, a mellow guitar riff drifting through the space, gradually building into an energetic indie track. People swayed or tapped their feet. Heidi seemed enthralled, bobbing her head to the rhythm. Clayton let the music wash over him, feeling the bass thrum in his chest. He couldn't recall the last time he'd done something so carefree. The crowd's warmth, the slightly sticky floor, the neon lights, it was messy, authentic, alive. Heidi occasionally glanced at him, grinning when the band hit a catchy chorus. He found himself grinning back, an electric sense of release coursing through him. After the set ended, they retreated to a corner to talk. The air buzzed with excitement. Heidi gushed about how the band was better lived than on their recorded tracks. Clayton teased, "You're a hardcore fan, aren't you?" She laughed. "Kind of. I love their vibe. Thanks for coming with me, by the way." He shrugged, feeling a slight flush. "I enjoyed it more than I expected." They lingered for the second set, then parted ways with her friends. By the time they left, it was close to midnight, and the city streets were quieter, a gentle breeze ruffling the summer night air. As they walked to the car, Heidi seemed buoyed by the music. She hopped slightly, humming the last tune. He couldn't help but smile at her energy. During the drive back to her place, they chatted easily about random topics, music preferences, funny stories from the office. A comfortable vibe settled between them. He pulled up to her apartment, car idling. She turned, eyes shining with post-concert exhilaration. "That was fun," she said softly. Thanks for letting me drag you out. He studied her face in the dim glow of the street lamp. I needed it. Sometimes I forget there's a world beyond my own problems. She nodded, her gaze flicking to his lips before darting away. Well, I'm glad you remembered tonight. A charged moment stretched between them. Clayton's pulse quickened, awareness flooding him that they were alone, close in the car. Heidi parted her lips as if about to speak, then seemed to second-guess herself. She smiled politely. Good night, then. He nodded. Good night. She slipped out, and he watched her enter the building lobby, a mix of relief and regret coiled in his stomach. He wasn't sure if he was ready for any form of intimacy again, especially with a co-worker, but he couldn't deny the spark that night had kindled. Driving home, he replayed the evening's warmth, the glances they'd shared, the sense of possibility. Easy, Clay, he told himself. Don't rush. But for the first time in a long while, he felt the stirrings of genuine hope, the sense that maybe he deserved a second chance at happiness, even if it started with something as simple as a shared concert. In the following days, that night lingered in his thoughts. Heidi remained professional at the office, though he sensed a slight shift in their dynamic. She was more relaxed, occasionally drifting into playful banter if no one else was around. He, too, found excuses to swing by her desk with a coffee or a minor question. Coworkers might have noticed, but no one commented openly. One afternoon, they ended up alone in the break room again. She was pouring tea. He reached for a mug at the same moment, their hands briefly touching. A flicker of tension passed between them. He tried to keep his voice light. So, any more concerts on the horizon? She grinned. Possibly next month, but I don't want to push my luck dragging you to every indie show in the city. He shrugged. I might actually enjoy them. He paused, uncertain if he should push further. Finally, he braved it. Heidi, about that night I had fun. Would you want to grab dinner sometime? Just the two of us. Her eyes widened, cheeks coloring. She seemed momentarily stunned, then her expression brightened. I'd like that. Sure. His heart pounded. Am I really doing this? She was a co-worker, younger, and he was freshly divorced from a horrifying betrayal, but something in him craved normal human connection. Okay, maybe Friday? She nodded. Sounds good. They parted with a mutual smile. He felt a surge of nervous excitement. Is this wise? He asked himself. Maybe not, but I can't stay locked away forever. Something about Heidi's gentleness, her earnest drive to better herself, reminded him there was good still in the world. Friday arrived. They agreed to meet at a small Italian restaurant after work. Clayton, typically not one to fuss, found himself checking his reflection in the condo mirror, adjusting his button-down shirt. He told himself it was just dinner with a friend. But you care about making a good impression. A voice teased in his head. He arrived first, stepping into the cozy restaurant. Dim lighting, red checkered tablecloths, a faint aroma of marinara. A hostess showed him to a corner table. Moments later, Heidi entered, wearing a simple yet flattering dress, hair loosely pinned up. She spotted him, waved shyly, and joined him. His heart gave a traitorous skip. They navigated the typical small talk how the day at the office went, a few funny updates on tasks she handled. The waiter brought them menus. Clayton suggested sharing a bottle of wine if she was okay with it. She blushed, admitting she wasn't a big drinker, but she'd try a glass. Once they ordered, conversation flowed more personally. She spoke of her family, 2 younger siblings, a single mother struggling to make ends meet back in her hometown. She felt responsible to help them someday, which fueled her determination to complete her degree and land a stable career. Clayton listened, genuinely impressed. She had a resilience he admired. He reciprocated, though more guardedly. He mentioned he was recently divorced, no children. He omitted the scandalous details. Heidi nodded, gaze sympathetic. That can't be easy, I'm sorry. He mustered a smile. It was for the best in the end. He changed the subject, not wanting to dampen the evening with heartbreak. Dinner was filled with gentle laughter, shared tastes of pasta, and a warm sense of connection. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu, which she insisted he try, he realized he hadn't thought about Valerie or Harry at once all night. It was a revelation, a sweet relief. Outside, the night air was cool. They strolled a short distance, hands occasionally bumping. Heidi gave him a sideways glance. This was nice. I haven't done a real dinner like this in a while. Usually it's fast food or cafeteria meals. He chuckled softly. I'm glad you liked it. So do you want to ride home? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, thanks. They got into his car, and as he started the engine, she quietly said, I appreciate you trusting me enough to spend time together, after everything. He glanced at her. You're easy to be around, Heidi, and I do trust you. She exhaled, a slight tremor in her breath. A gentle hush enveloped them, the moment charged. Then she leaned across the console, tentatively pressing her lips to his cheek. It was brief, a soft brush. She pulled back, blushing furiously, eyes lowered. Sorry, He reached up, lightly touching his cheek where she kissed. His voice came out husky. Don't apologize. He leaned in, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. It was slow, almost questioning. She responded with a soft sigh, hands lightly resting on his shoulders. When they broke apart, she looked at him with a mix of wonder and nervousness. He whispered, I'm not sure what this means, but I don't regret it. She swallowed, smiling shyly. Me neither. He started the drive, adrenaline surging. The warmth of her lips lingered. Am I truly ready for this? The question lurked, but the desire to find happiness overshadowed his fears. He dropped her at her building, and before she left, they shared another gentle kiss that left his heart racing. That night, in his condo, he lay in bed, mind buzzing with the memory of her closeness. Guilt tried to creep in, reminding him he'd so recently ended a tumultuous marriage. But for once, he gave himself permission to feel a spark of joy without overthinking. I can be cautious and still let good things happen, he reasoned. Over the next week, they navigated this new dynamic carefully. At work, they remained professional. He was still her boss, after all. They avoided overt displays of affection in the office. Yet there were exchanged glances, small smiles, a secret understanding that something blossomed outside these walls. After hours, they'd meet for coffee or a short walk, inching closer both physically and emotionally. One night, over takeout at his condo, Heidi admitted she was nervous about the age gap, about what people might say. He gently reassured her that they'd keep things respectful at the firm, and that no one else had to define their relationship. She confessed she felt safe with him, that his calm presence contrasted with the chaotic life she'd known. He, in turn, confessed his battered heart needed gentle healing. She offered it willingly. They hadn't crossed any deeper lines physically yet, just kisses and close embraces, building trust. He found it both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. The echoes of Valerie's betrayal still haunted him. But with Heidi, each day felt like a chance to rebuild faith in others, in himself. One evening, after a sweet date, they sat on his condo balcony sipping lukewarm tea. The city sparkled below. Heidi snuggled against his side, her hair tickling his chin. He draped an arm around her, inhaling the faint floral scent of her shampoo. A comfortable silence wrapped them. Eventually, she spoke softly. Clayton, I know you've been through a lot. I don't want to push or pry. But do you ever think about having kids, a family someday? He stiffened, memories stinging like fresh cuts. I used to. Then everything changed. He paused, pressing his lips together. It's complicated. But yeah, there's a part of me that still wants children. Or maybe I'm too damaged. I really don't know. She looked up at him, eyes full of empathy. You're not damaged. Hurt, yes, but not broken. People heal, you know? He swallowed, voice tight. I guess so. It's just I was lied to about kids who weren't even mine. A wave of emotion hit him. Sometimes I feel cheated out of real fatherhood. She gently reached for his hand. I'm sorry that happened to you. I won't pretend to know that pain. But you deserve the chance to rebuild, if that's what you want. He exhaled, tension easing under her gentle touch. Thank you. For not judging. For being here. She laced her fingers through his. I'm here, Clayton. No expectations. Just us, right now. He nodded, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. They returned to comfortable silence, gazing at the city lights. For the first time since the meltdown with Valerie, Harriet, and Miles, he felt a tangible sense of hope, a future that wasn't defined by bitterness or revenge. He still had scars, but maybe with Heidi's quiet support, he could learn to live fully again. The crisp autumn air clung to Clayton Reed's jacket as he stepped out of his downtown condo. Since moving in, he'd grown to appreciate the sense of detachment that high-rise living offered. No yard to remind him of the family he once thought he had. No quiet suburban street filled with painful memories. Now, each morning he descended the elevator, nodded at the doorman, and left behind the hush of his private refuge for a city bustling below. It had been weeks since he and Heidi first kissed on his balcony, forging a tentative bond in the aftermath of his divorce from Valerie. They kept their relationship private, at least from the office rumor mill. Still, their glances and subtle interactions hinted at something deeper. Clayton was learning how to let someone in again, how to navigate small intimacies without drowning in past betrayal. He exhaled a breath of cold air, striding toward the parking garage. Every so often he checked his phone, half expecting new threats from Miles or Harriet, but that storm seemed to fade. Harriet had settled the lawsuit with a hefty payout and slunk away, presumably licking her wounds in social exile. Miles, after losing corporate ground, was rumored to be embroiled in a separate lawsuit, Valerie's claim for child support. From all accounts, Miles was stuck. A quiet sense of justice warmed Clayton whenever he thought about it. Yet while external battles dulled, internal ones persisted. Clayton still woke in the middle of the night, haunted by dreams of Emma and Jake. The children he'd raised yet discovered weren't biologically his. He'd see Emma's bright face in dream fragments, calling him Daddy, only for her form to melt away, replaced by Miles's mocking grin. He never spoke of these nightmares to Heidi, not wanting to burden her with the depths of his sorrow. He told himself that each day forward was a victory in itself, and tried to believe it. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass doors of RCW Structural Solutions, illuminating the lobby where Heidi worked her front desk magic. Clayton paused outside, watching her through the transparent wall before stepping in. She looked confident, fielding phone calls with ease, greeting an arriving courier. In her presence, the office's atmosphere felt lighter. He'd even noticed co-workers commenting on how sunny the front desk seemed these days. He entered, and her brown eyes flickered up, a subtle smile curving her lips. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," she said lightly, playing the role for any onlookers. He returned a courteous nod, suppressing the urge to grin back. "Morning? Busy day ahead?" She handed him a folder discreetly. "HR updates, new intern applications, and your 10 a.m. with the municipal board was rescheduled for 11. Her voice was pure professionalism to the casual ear, but the soft warmth in her gaze belonged solely to him. "Thanks," he murmured, heading to his office. Behind closed doors, he skimmed the HR documents. Nothing major. Their firm was thriving, ironically unaffected by the personal storms that once threatened to consume him. In fact, landing the new municipal contract had catapulted the company's reputation. Clients wanted the meticulous expertise that Clayton had become known for. Around mid-morning, Heidi discreetly slipped in to drop more paperwork on his desk. Once the door clicked shut, her facade melted. "Hey, you," she whispered. "Sleep okay?" Clayton exhaled. "Better than usual," he lied softly. "And you?" She nodded, hesitating for a second. "We still on for dinner tonight?" "Of course," he replied, a flicker of anticipation stirring. They'd been exploring new restaurants every few days, an unofficial routine that gave them both a taste of normalcy outside these walls. She smiled, eyes gleaming with unspoken affection, then slipped out before any co-worker questioned her extended visit. Clayton leaned back in his chair. As hectic as life had been, he found the quiet pockets with Heidi rejuvenating. He still wrestled with trust issues, sometimes questioning if he truly deserved to be at peace, but each day with her chipped away at the cynicism that had coated his heart. Around noon, an email from Nicole landed in his inbox with a subject line that made his stomach flip. Valerie's counsel inquiry. He clicked it, nerves prickling. The message was short. "Clayton, Valerie's attorney reached out. She's requesting a meeting regarding a personal matter. They said it's not about reversing the divorce or claiming assets. If you're open to hearing them out, let me know. Clayton felt the old anger flare. Valerie wants a meeting? For what? The divorce was final. Finances settled. He'd cut ties to the children. Was she hoping to manipulate him into fathering them again? The thought chilled him. But Nicole's note implied it was a separate issue. After a few moments of stewing, he typed a terse reply. Fine. Set a time. I'll come, but I want you present. He pressed send, a bitter taste on his tongue. He had no illusions about reconciling with Valerie. He'd come a long way from the heartbreak, though it still festered. But curiosity gnawed. What could she possibly want? He tried to refocus on work. The afternoon slogged by, tasks piling up. Yet his mind kept circling back. The last time he saw Valerie was in that courthouse corridor, tear-streaked, pleading for him to remain in Emma and Jake's life. He'd refused. He never learned how the kids reacted. A hollow pang twisted his gut. Let it go, Clay. At 6:30, Clayton and Heidi strolled into a quaint bistro tucked along a side street. Flickering candles on each table cast dancing shadows on exposed brick walls. The hostess seated them near a window overlooking a softly lit courtyard. As they settled, Heidi studied him with a gentle frown. You're tense? Bad day? Clayton toyed with his napkin, forcing a wry smile. Just stuff. Valerie's attorney reached out. Nicole wants to set up a meeting. Heidi's expression grew cautious. And you said yes? Yeah, with Nicole present. No clue what Valerie wants. I'm sure it's more drama. He sighed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it here. She reached across the table, giving his hand a quick, reassuring squeeze before pulling away to maintain decorum. You can talk to me about anything, you know. I understand if it's complicated. Her unwavering support soothed him. He relaxed fractionally, letting the warm bistro ambiance do the rest. They perused menus, chatted about lighter topics, Heidi's college classes, new project proposals at RCW, a silly anecdote about how Tim from engineering once tried to fix the office printer and almost set it on fire. Laughter bubbled between them, easing the day's tension. Their entrees arrived salmon for Heidi, a steak for Clayton. The comforting clink of silverware accompanied their conversation. At some point, she mentioned her older roommate was moving out, leaving Heidi to either find a new place or cover higher rent. Clayton felt an impulse to suggest she move in with him, but reined it in. It was too soon, especially given office politics and the fragility of their budding relationship. Dessert was a shared slice of cheesecake. By then, the tension in Clayton's shoulders had melted, replaced by a content hush. Heidi dabbed her mouth, smiling softly. I like this, she said. Being able to just be ourselves, enjoy dinner. No secrets, no drama. He nodded, returning her gaze. Me too. Yet in the back of his mind, Valerie's looming request lingered, a small thread of unease pulling at the fabric of this peaceful evening. 3 days later, Clayton found himself seated in Nicole's modern office once again. The glass table reflected the midday sun, and the neutral beige walls offered no comfort. He glanced at the door as Valerie entered, accompanied by a woman he recognized as her lawyer. Valerie looked worn, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The moment the door shut, Nicole cleared her throat. All right, let's keep this civil. Valerie, your counsel said you had a request. We're listening. Valerie settled into a chair, hands clasped tightly. Clayton, she began, voice subdued. I know we're divorced. I'm not asking for money or anything, but Emma's been having a really hard time. She misses you. They both do. She swallowed, fighting tears. She's in counseling now. Her therapist thinks it might help if she could talk to you, even if just once to get some closure. Jake is a bit young, but Emma's old enough to feel abandoned. She still calls you Daddy Clayton. Clayton's heart thudded painfully. He'd braced for something like this, yet hearing it aloud cut deep. He stared at the table, refusing to meet her gaze. I told you, they're not my children. I can't. Valerie's voice cracked. I know you have every right to walk away, but Emma's hurting. She's only 6. This is bigger than the legalities, her lawyer chimed in softly. We're not asking for reinstated paternity or child support. Just a possible meeting, a supervised counseling session, maybe. strictly for the child's emotional well-being. Nicole's gaze flicked to Clayton, her expression unreadable. Legally, there's no obligation. This is personal. Clayton clenched his fists. The memories of Emma's bright smile battered his defenses. Why should I? You let me believe they were mine. Now you want me to fill in as a pseudo-father again? His voice rose with anger. Is Miles not stepping up? Valerie's shoulders shook, tears spilling. He pays child support now that paternity's proven, but he's distant. Emma doesn't connect with him. She keeps asking for you. I'm desperate, Clay. I hate that I did this to all of us, but the kids didn't choose it. Silence pressed in. Clayton's mind wrestled with conflicting emotions. Fury at Valerie's gall, heartbreak for Emma's suffering, a protective urge he couldn't fully quell. He could feel Nicole's watchful gaze. Finally, he exhaled. I need time to think. Valerie nodded, wiping her cheeks. Thank you. That's all I ask. Nicole ended the meeting swiftly, not wanting it to spiral into emotional chaos. Clayton walked out without another word, anger and sorrow warring in his chest. On the elevator ride down, he clenched his teeth, eyes stinging. Emma's in therapy because I vanished from her life. But it wasn't my fault. Back in his condo that evening, Clayton tried to bury himself in reports, but his thoughts churned relentlessly. Emma's small face floated in his mind, her voice from old videos echoing, "Daddy, Daddy, watch me dance." He slammed the laptop shut, restlessly pacing the living room. They are not my kids, he muttered under his breath, as though saying it aloud would quell the ache. The phone buzzed a text from Heidi. You okay? Haven't heard from you since lunch. He stared at the message, debating how much to reveal. Finally, he called her, voice trembling with a vulnerability he rarely showed. He recounted the meeting with Valerie, the request about Emma. Heidi listened quietly, then said, That's heavy. I'm so sorry. Do you think you'll see Emma? I don't know, he whispered. Part of me feels I should stand my ground. Another part can't bear the thought of her suffering. Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken concerns. Then Heidi murmured, Maybe talk to a therapist yourself, Clay. Or at least give it serious thought. This is complicated. You're dealing with deep wounds. He pressed his palm to his forehead. I keep telling myself I'm fine. But you're right. It's complicated. She offered gentle reassurance. By the time they hung up, a seed of resolution had been planted in him. Maybe he needed professional guidance to navigate the moral and emotional tangle of Emma's needs versus his own healing. He made the call the next morning, scheduling an appointment with a recommended counselor. It felt surreal, stepping into a cozy office with plush chairs and soft lamps. The therapist, Dr. Alvarez, greeted him kindly, guiding him to sit. He wasn't sure how to begin, so he started with broad strokes. His marriage, the betrayal, discovering the kids weren't his, the subsequent divorce. Dr. Alvarez listened attentively, occasionally making notes. When Clayton mentioned Emma's therapist requesting a meeting, his voice cracked. I feel guilty, but I also feel I have every right to walk away. Dr. Alvarez leaned forward. Both can be true. You were deceived, and that's traumatic. Yet you formed genuine bonds with Emma and Jake that don't vanish overnight. Clayton fisted his hands, tears burning behind his eyes. I'm just so angry. Part of me wants to never see them again, to not get sucked back in. Another part imagines Emma's tears, and it kills me. Dr. Alvarez nodded. The child is innocent, but your pain is valid. Maybe consider a single counseling session with Emma if only to provide closure. You control the boundaries. Sometimes a gentle goodbye can help both parties heal. He left the session feeling raw but more centered. The idea of a carefully structured meeting with Emma in a therapist's office both comforted and terrified him. He decided to let the thought settle before making a final choice. That evening, Heidi visited his condo for the first time since he'd moved in. She brought takeout Thai food, cheerfully teasing him about the minimal decor. They sat cross-legged on the living room floor, containers spread out, the city lights flickering outside. Between bites of pad thai, she asked softly, How was therapy? He shrugged. Eye-opening. Hard, but maybe needed. Dr. Alvarez suggested a controlled meeting with Emma might help. Heidi rubbed his arm reassuringly. It's your call, Clay. No one can force you. But I know you're a caring person, despite everything you went through. He stared at the pad tie, appetite wavering. What if seeing me again just confuses Emma more? What if it sets me back? Heidi set her food aside, shifting closer. Kids are resilient, especially if adults handle things with honesty. Maybe you can explain you love her, but you aren't living together anymore. I'm no expert, but I can imagine she just wants to see the man she saw as dad. His throat tightened. I do care about her, and it's not her fault. I just worry it'll rip open old wounds. Heidi slid a hand over his, then set boundaries. It might be the last conversation or maybe an occasional contact. Do what feels right. Clayton exhaled shakily, nodding. He realized, with a pang of gratitude, how Heidi's steady compassion had become a source of strength. In that moment, he knew his decision might define how he moved forward, whether he lived forever in anger or found some measure of grace for the innocent child caught in the crossfire. The next day, spurred by a restless night, he phoned Nicole and asked her to arrange a single supervised session with Emma in the presence of Emma's therapist. Valerie was to be there too, though Clayton insisted Miles not attend. I won't be near that bastard, he stated firmly. Nicole relayed the conditions. Valerie's lawyer agreed, setting a date the following week. Anxiety gnawed at Clayton as the day approached. In the quiet hours before dawn, he questioned his choice, but each time, he recalled Dr. Alvarez's words about closure. He reminded himself that this meeting didn't force him back into fatherhood. It was a chance to help Emma find peace and maybe carve a path for his own. The appointed afternoon found Clayton in a child-friendly therapy office. The walls were bright with cartoon decals, small chairs, and plush toys scattered around. Emma's therapist, a gentle-eyed woman named Miss Beecham, greeted him. Valerie and Emma were in a separate room, waiting. He felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't seen Emma in months, not since everything unraveled. Stay calm, be kind, Dr. Alvarez's advice echoed in his mind. Miss Beecham led him into a softly lit playroom. Valerie sat on a small couch, looking tense. Emma perched on a cushion, hugging a stuffed giraffe. The moment Clayton stepped in, Emma's eyes lit up, then flickered with uncertainty. She stood, wobbly, as though unsure whether to run to him or stay put. Hi, Emma, he managed, voice quivering. She looked older, hair slightly longer, face a bit thinner. A swirl of longing and regret flooded him. She clutched the giraffe tighter. Daddy? She whispered, eyes brimming with tears. He stepped closer, lowering himself to her eye level. Hey, sweetheart. He wanted to scoop her up, but he hesitated, unsure if he should. She solved it by flinging her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. His heart cracked wide open. The following paragraphs detail the session in careful, emotionally intense conversation and reflection. Over the next 40 minutes, Miss Beecham gently guided them. Emma tearfully asked why he didn't come home. Clayton explained, his voice trembling, that grown-up problems had led him to move away, that he loved her but wasn't living with Mommy anymore. He carefully avoided the paternity specifics. Miss Beecham said Emma wasn't ready for that complexity. Instead, he offered reassurance that her worth wasn't tied to any adult decisions. Valerie mostly stayed silent, tears slipping now and then, apparently grateful for the chance to see Emma so comforted. At one point, Emma asked if she could see him again. Clayton froze, panic flaring. Miss Beecham intervened delicately, suggesting they decide if occasional letters or calls might be possible. When the session ended, Emma squeezed his hand, whispering, I miss you. He had to swallow hard to avoid breaking down. He kissed her hair softly and murmured, I miss you too, kiddo. As Miss Beecham led Emma out, Clayton felt an overwhelming mix of relief, sadness, and longing. Valerie approached hesitantly. Thank you for doing this. It helped her a lot. He nodded, unable to form words. Then he turned and left, feeling both liberated and utterly shattered. That night, back in his condo, Clayton paced like a restless spirit. The meeting with Emma had stirred a hornet's nest of feelings. He couldn't stop replaying her tearful embrace, her plea for him to not vanish. Part of him felt a measure of closure. He'd seen her, reassured her. Another part couldn't shake the guilt of leaving. He tried calling Heidi, but she was in an evening class. A swirl of frustration rose. He needed to talk to someone. Instead, he drove aimlessly through downtown, windows rolled down to let the cool air prick his skin. He passed the diner where he once found solace in late-night coffee, the bar where he and Warren used to decompress. Memories interwove with the present, reminding him how far he'd come and how fragile he still felt. Eventually, he pulled over by a park, stepping out to breathe in the night air. The city's glow painted the horizon. In the distance, a couple strolled hand in hand, silhouettes merging in the gloom. A pang of loneliness washed over him. He tried to recall Dr. Alvarez's words. You can honor the love you had for Emma while acknowledging the betrayal that ended it. But that didn't ease the ache. After an hour of wandering the park paths, he returned to his car. Heidi had texted, "Done with class. Everything okay?" He typed a simple reply, "I'm struggling. Talk tomorrow?" Then he drove home, resolved to face the swirl head-on rather than burying it as he once might have. The next evening, Heidi came by. Clayton had offered to cook, but his limited skill set amounted to spaghetti with jarred sauce. She teased him. Then they settled on the couch, plates balanced on their laps. He told her every detail about the session with Emma, the heartbreak, the confusion, the tenderness of that hug. Heidi listened intently, occasionally resting a hand on his knee in support. "She asked if she could see me again," he murmured, eyes distant. I froze. I don't know if I can handle a regular presence in her life. But the idea of never seeing her again also hurts. Heidi leaned closer. "You're allowed to take time deciding, and maybe talk to Dr. Alvarez about boundaries. Emma's therapist might suggest periodic short visits, or you might choose just phone calls. It doesn't have to be all or nothing." He nodded, shoulders slumping. "Yeah, I guess. Everything's so complicated. Part of me wonders if I'm just prolonging the pain." Heidi squeezed his hand. "Pain might be inevitable, but you can manage it. And if it helps Emma heal, maybe it's worth some inconvenience. But don't feel obligated to parent her again. That's not your responsibility." He gazed at her, gratitude warming his chest. "Thanks for not judging me. I appreciate your level head, especially when mine's spinning." She smiled softly, leaning to rest her cheek on his shoulder. "I'm here for you, Clay, wherever this goes." In that quiet moment, the spaghetti forgotten, he realized just how much Heidi had become an anchor in his storm. A few days later, he returned to Dr. Alvarez for a follow-up session, detailing the meeting with Emma. Dr. Alvarez listened, then asked, "What do you want moving forward?" Clayton rubbed his temples. "I don't know. Emma wants some kind of contact. It might help her, but I'm terrified I'll get sucked back into fatherhood only to be reminded they aren't really mine." Dr. Alvarez's tone remained calm. "Sometimes relationships evolve. You may not be dad in a legal sense, but you could be a supportive adult figure if that feels right, or you might decide it's too painful. Either choice is valid." He inhaled, recalling Emma's tear-streaked face. "I might try monthly phone calls, maybe. Keep it light. And if it gets too heavy, I can reevaluate." Dr. Alvarez nodded. "That's a reasonable boundary. Communicate it clearly to Valerie. Make sure this is about Emma's well-being, not her attempts at reconciling." He agreed, feeling a flicker of resolve. He didn't owe Valerie forgiveness, but Emma was an innocent child who once saw him as a safe figure. If a limited presence could aid her healing without destroying his own, he was willing to try. Meanwhile, life at RCW Structural Solutions thrived. A new city infrastructure project was on the table, potentially the firm's biggest contract yet. The board recognized Clayton's meticulous approach. He found himself working late nights, finalizing proposals, corralling engineers to ensure every detail was perfect. The deadlines loomed, but the challenge invigorated him. Heidi continued excelling at the front desk. She'd integrated seamlessly with the administrative team, some of whom teased her about getting coffee with the boss. They assumed it was a casual mentorship. Heidi just smiled politely, never confirming or denying. Outside of office hours, they still met for quiet dinners or the occasional local concert. A hush of secrecy added a frisson of excitement. One afternoon, as Heidi organized files in Clayton's office, she glanced around with a playful grin. "You know, I half expected your desk to be drowning in blueprints, but you're oddly tidy. He laughed. After the fiasco with my personal life, I keep everything else in order. It's my coping strategy. She nodded, a flicker of empathy in her eyes. Makes sense. So, any big weekend plans? He hesitated. I was thinking about calling Emma, for the first time since that session. I said I'd try to keep in touch. Do you think I'm insane for doing it? Heidi's expression softened. Not at all. I think you're courageous. Just remember you can hang up if it feels overwhelming. He smiled, heart warmed by her unwavering support. Thanks. Saturday rolled around. Clayton found himself alone in his condo, phone in hand, drumming his fingers on the countertop. He'd texted Valerie's lawyer that he'd attempt a 5-minute call. They arranged a time Emma would be available. Precisely at 3 o'clock, he dialed the number. His heart pounded as the line connected. Valerie answered softly, then passed the phone to Emma. Hello? Came the little voice. He swallowed. Hey, Emma. It's Clayton. She gasped, then let out a small giggle. Hi. Mommy said you'd call. I'm coloring. Do you like coloring? Relief flooded him that she wasn't crying. I do. What are you coloring? A unicorn. It has pink hair. She prattled on about sparkles and glitter, oblivious to the tension thrumming through his veins. He responded with genuine interest, focusing on the ease of her chatter. Eventually, she mentioned going to the park with Jake. Her voice wobbled slightly. We used to go to the park with you. He steadied himself. Yeah, I remember. We had fun. She fell quiet, then said, I miss that. His throat tightened. Me too, he whispered. But I'm glad you're still going. Their 5 minutes stretched to 10 as they exchanged light banter about her favorite cartoons and a new stuffed animal. Then Valerie gently reminded them to wrap up. Emma ended with a shy, thank you for calling, and a sweet, I love you, Clay. He choked back tears. Love you too, kiddo. Take care. He hung up, chest quivering. But amid the ache, a hint of solace flickered. Emma sounded okay. He wasn't fully absent from her life. Maybe that was enough for now. The following Monday, as if the universe decided Clayton's partial peace was too serene, Miles reappeared like a specter. He showed up in the RCW lobby unannounced. Heidi, alarmed, texted Clayton, Miles is here. Wants to see you. Clayton's stomach twisted. He marched out, finding Miles leaning against a wall, scanning the space with a haughty air. Miles looked disheveled dark circles under his eyes, tie askew. The minute he spotted Clayton, he pushed off the wall. What the hell are you doing here? Clayton demanded, voice low. Miles's lips curled. Trying to talk some sense into you. Valerie told me you've been calling Emma. You think you can play hero again? You're confusing the child. Anger flared in Clayton's gut. I'm trying to help Emma. If you were actually a decent father, maybe she wouldn't be so upset. Miles sneered. Don't start. I pay child support. That's more than you do. And they're my kids, not yours. Clayton clenched his fists, heart pounding. Exactly, they're your kids. So step up. Don't show your face here again. Heidi peeked from behind the front desk, face pale. Co-workers began noticing the tension. Miles's eyes flickered to her, then back to Clayton. A sneer tugged his lip. So you've moved on with a new fling. Classic. Well, enjoy playing house with your secretary, but keep your nose out of my affairs. Clayton's anger flared white-hot. Get out before I call security. Miles let out a derisive laugh. Careful, Reed. Don't forget who fathered Emma and Jake. If I decide to cut you off from them again, you won't see them. I only see Emma because she wants it, Clayton growled. You have no say if Valerie agrees. Miles glowered, then pivoted and strode out. Clayton stood there, adrenaline surging, breath heaving. Heidi rushed over, placing a comforting hand on his arm. Are you okay? He forced a nod, though his pulse hammered. I'm fine. I'm sorry you had to see that. She gave his arm a squeeze. Don't apologize. He's the one causing trouble. A hush fell in the lobby as curious employees dispersed. Clayton realized this was the first time Miles openly confronted him at work. The nerve of that man. Part of him wanted to press charges for harassment. He swallowed the urge, deciding to let it pass for now. But if he comes back within hours, gossip swirled through the office. People whispered about the angry man in the lobby, confronting the boss. Some knew fragments of the story: Clayton's ex-wife, scandal with kids, and Harriet's hush money. Heidi fielded uneasy questions from admin staff, giving curt, professional answers. Clayton retreated to his office, where Warren called after hearing the news from a co-worker. "You want me to contact security? File a restraining order?" Warren offered. Clayton pinched the bridge of his nose. "Let's hold off. If Miles tries it again, we'll escalate. He's probably just unhinged about the child support and me talking to Emma." Warren grumbled agreement, cautioning Clayton to remain vigilant. By day's end, Clayton felt drained. The high from finalizing major proposals evaporated under the tension of Miles's intrusion. He texted Heidi that he'd skipped their usual post-work dinner. Instead, he collapsed onto his condo couch, staring at the ceiling. Why can't Miles just vanish? The next twist arrived in the form of an elegant ivory envelope in Clayton's mailbox, bearing Harriet Stanhope's engraved initials. He nearly tossed it out, suspecting more unwanted drama. But curiosity won. Inside was a stiff card inviting him to Harriet's charity soiree next month, some lavish event raising funds for a museum restoration. Why would she invite me after everything? A short note scribbled in Harriet's precise handwriting read, "Despite our differences, I'd like to extend an olive branch. This event is important, and your attendance would be appreciated. Let's show civility, at least in public." Clayton snorted. Harriet had nerve, pretending to play gracious hostess after conspiring to cheat him. He considered ignoring it, but a spark of vengeful curiosity flickered. Harriet's social circle was well aware of her scandal. Perhaps she was trying to salvage her reputation by demonstrating she'd made peace with him. The idea of attending and subtly undermining her attempts at whitewashing the past held a certain appeal. But do I want more conflict? He tossed the invite on the counter, determined to think it over. Over dinner at Heidi's modest apartment the following night, he told her about Harriet's invitation. Heidi frowned. "She wants to use you as a prop to show everything's forgiven?" Clayton shrugged. "Probably. But part of me wants to go just to show I'm not intimidated. Another part wants zero contact." Heidi sipped her soda, thinking, "You've won your battles, Clay. You don't owe Harriet anything. If going stresses you out, don't. But if you want to face her on your terms, that's your right." He appreciated her balanced perspective. "Would you come with me if I decided to go?" Her eyes widened. "As your date? That might blow our office cover." He gave a half smile. "Maybe I'm ready to stop hiding. Harriet's event might be a dramatic stage for that reveal, though." A flicker of excitement and concern danced in Heidi's expression. She set aside her fork, leaning in. "I'll stand by you if that's what you want, but think carefully. Harriet's circles can be vicious. I don't want you or me caught in more gossip." He caught her hand. "We'll decide together, okay?" She nodded, smiling softly. As the week continued, Clayton juggled intense project deadlines, sporadic therapy sessions, and carefully limited calls to Emma. Miles stayed away, though rumors circulated he was appealing the child support ruling. Harriet's envelope sat on Clayton's desk at home, a silent reminder of the lingering ties to that family. One evening, after a particularly draining day, he felt the tension accumulate in his chest. He flicked on the TV, seeking mindless distraction, but found none. Instead, he opened his phone to old photos of Emma and Jake, ones he hadn't deleted. He flipped through them, a strange mix of longing and acceptance settling over him. "They're part of my past, but my future is open." He found himself texting Heidi. "Would you consider going to Harriet's event with me? I need to show I'm not running from them anymore." She replied almost immediately, "If you're sure, then yes, I'm with you." Smiling faintly, he set down the phone. Harriet's plan to reclaim social standing might backfire if Clayton showed up with a new partner, unashamed and unbowed by her manipulations. He wasn't certain it was wise, but it felt cathartic to face them on a grand stage, revealing that he'd moved beyond their betrayal. The invitation's date approached faster than expected. Harriet's soiree was scheduled at a lavish mansion, complete with a formal dinner, silent auction, and live music. Clayton arranged for black tie attire, something he hadn't worn since well before the divorce fiasco. Meanwhile, Heidi scrambled to find a suitable gown that didn't break her tight budget. They joked about how it felt like prepping for a prom, albeit one with higher stakes. They decided to keep their plan mostly quiet at the office. Warren was the only one who knew details, since Clayton asked for his input on the potential fallout. "You sure you want to do this?" Warren asked, adjusting his glasses. "Harriet's crowd is the same upper echelon that looked down on you after the scandal." Clayton shrugged. "Let them look. I'm done hiding." Warren nodded, offering a wry grin. "Good luck. If you need backup, call me. I'd pay to see Harriet's face." The night of the event, Clayton drove to Heidi's apartment. She emerged wearing a midnight blue gown with a modest neckline, her hair in soft waves. He felt his breath hitch. She looked stunning, yet there was a nervous flutter in her expression. He, in a sleek black tuxedo, offered a reassuring smile. "You look amazing." She flushed. "Thank you. You too. Let's hope I don't trip in these heels." The drive to Harriet's event felt surreal, tension mingling with excitement. The mansion, a sprawling estate lit by chandeliers, loomed into view. Valets directed them to the entrance. Clayton stepped out first, handing the keys to a valet who eyed them politely. Heidi carefully exited, scanning the opulent surroundings. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. Her hand trembled slightly as she linked it through. "Let's do this," she whispered. Inside, the soiree was in full swing. A string quartet played softly in a corner. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes, and well-dressed guests mingled under glittering chandeliers. Clayton spotted Harriet across the room, flanked by socialites. She wore an elegant ivory dress, her silver hair coiled in a regal bun. The instant Harriet's gaze fell on Clayton and Heidi by his side, her composure slipped. A flicker of surprise, maybe annoyance, crossed her features. Clayton guided Heidi through the crowd, nodding politely at acquaintances who recognized him. Whispers trailed behind them, a ripple of curiosity at the sight of the man Harriet once deceived, now returning on his own terms. He recognized a few of Harriet's longtime friends who offered guarded smiles. Some looked pointedly at Heidi, but said nothing. Approaching Harriet felt like stepping onto a stage. She wore a practiced smile. "Clayton, I'm pleased you accepted my invitation." Her eyes darted to Heidi. "And you brought a companion, I see." "Yes, Harriet," Clayton said coolly. "This is Heidi Brooks." He didn't specify their relationship, letting Harriet draw her own conclusions. Harriet extended a cordial hand to Heidi, masking any shock behind a veneer of politeness. "Delighted," she murmured. "I do hope you'll enjoy the evening. It's for an excellent cause." Heidi offered a polite nod. "Thank you. The mansion is lovely." Awkward silence threatened. Harriet cleared her throat. "Clayton, might we speak privately later?" "Just briefly." He flicked a glance at Heidi, then back at Harriet. "We'll see." Then he excused them, leading Heidi deeper into the crowd. He wasn't about to abandon her to Harriet's scrutiny. The next hour was a whirlwind of polite mingling. Clayton introduced Heidi to a few corporate figures he recognized. She held her own, politely answering their questions about her background in business classes. Some men eyed her with veiled interest, but she stuck close to Clayton's side, an unspoken solidarity linking them. Harriet occasionally hovered in the periphery, entertaining guests, sneaking glances their way. Valerie was nowhere in sight. Clayton hadn't expected her at Harriet's soiree, but a part of him wondered if she might appear. He tried to quell the uneasy feeling that Miles might show up unannounced again. Eventually, they found a quiet nook near a grand staircase. Heidi exhaled, eyes wide. "This is intense. People keep staring." Clayton brushed her hand gently. "They're curious. Harriet probably spun some tale about us. Let them stare." She nodded, though her fingers trembled. "I'm okay, just a bit overwhelmed by the formality." He leaned closer, voice low. "We'll duck out soon if it gets too much, but I do want Harriet to see I'm not cowering." Heidi squared her shoulders. "Then let's keep our heads high." As if on cue, Harriet drifted over, wearing a gracious smile for the public. "Clayton, dear, so many are delighted to see you here, supporting the museum. Could I borrow you for a moment?" Heidi gave him a questioning look. He nodded subtly, turning to Harriet. "All right, but Heidi stays with me." Harriet's eyes flickered, but she didn't protest. She led them to a more secluded corner of the lounge. There, Harriet's smile vanished. "Why bring her here, Clay? Are you trying to embarrass me?" He let out a humorless chuckle. "Embarrass you? Harriet, you embarrassed yourself when you took hush money and helped Valerie cheat." Heidi tensed at his side, lips pressed together. Harriet's composure wavered. "I invited you as a gesture of reconciliation. I'm trying to move on from past unpleasantness. Funny how you define betrayal as mere unpleasantness." His tone dripped with sarcasm. Harriet inhaled sharply, then eyed Heidi. "I see you've moved on too. I suppose I should congratulate you." The words were laced with condescension. Heidi lifted her chin, maintaining politeness. "We're both moving on, Harriet. That's something worth respecting, right?" Harriet's nostrils flared. "Yes, well, for Emma and Jake's sake, I hope you keep your distance. They need stability, not confusion." Rage flashed in Clayton's eyes. "You lost any right to lecture me about the kids' well-being. I've made my peace with Emma in a way that's good for her, not for your social standing." Harriet's mouth tightened. "Fine. Enjoy the evening, then." She pivoted and strode off, gracefully merging into another group of guests, leaving a trail of tension behind. The heated exchange with Harriet left Clayton's blood boiling. Heidi sensed his frustration, gently guiding him toward the mansion's open-air veranda for fresh air. A small number of guests stood outside, sipping drinks and conversing. The evening sky was dotted with stars. As they stepped onto the veranda, two older women glided by, whispering in hushed tones. Clayton caught snatches of words like scandal and illegitimate children. He forced himself not to react, though Heidi stiffened. "Do you want to leave?" she murmured, scanning his tense posture. He considered it, but a stubborn part of him refused to let Harriet's circle chase him out. "Not yet. Let them talk. I don't owe them anything." Heidi nodded, her arm slipping around his waist in quiet solidarity. He relaxed fractionally, exhaling into the cool night air. "I'm sorry you have to deal with this," he said softly. She shook her head. "No apologies. I'm here by choice. Besides, you deserve someone in your corner." They lingered by the railing, gazing at the manicured gardens. The murmur of party chatter drifted behind them. For a moment, they found a pocket of peace, the starlight reflecting in Heidi's eyes. Clayton brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, gratitude swelling. "She stands by me even in this storm." At that moment, the hush behind them shifted. Clayton turned, heart jolting. Valerie stepped onto the veranda wearing a simple but elegant dress. She locked eyes with him, surprise flitting across her face when she saw Heidi. Heidi glanced anxiously at Clayton. He inhaled. "Let's see what she wants." Valerie approached slowly, clasping her hands. I didn't expect you here." Clayton shrugged. "Likewise." Valerie offered a ghost of a smile, eyes darting to Heidi. "Hi. We've never been introduced properly." Heidi nodded politely. "Heidi Brooks." "Valerie," she said, voice subdued. An awkward beat passed. Then Valerie turned to Clayton. "I was invited by Harriet, obviously. She insisted I show up to prove we're all civilized. But it's uncomfortable." She hesitated. "Thank you for calling Emma the other day. She was so happy." Clayton forced a nod. "I'm glad. That was for Emma, not you or Harriet." Valerie lowered her gaze. "I understand." Another pause. "I won't bother you. Just you seem good. You deserve that." Unexpected compassion flickered in Clayton's chest. Valerie looked tired, remorse etched on her features. The anger he once felt didn't flare as hotly now. "I'm moving forward," he said softly. "You should too." Valerie glanced at Heidi, then back at him. "I'm trying." With a weak smile, she added, "I'll let you two enjoy the evening." She stepped away, blending into the crowd. Heidi let out a slow breath. "Wow, that was less explosive than I feared." Clayton nodded, heart heavy. "She's not the same arrogant person from before. Might be the guilt wearing her down." He felt a touch of relief that this confrontation ended peacefully. No screaming, no tears, just a quiet acknowledgement of irreparable change. As the night wore on, Clayton and Heidi endured more stares and whispers, but no direct confrontations. The silent auction concluded. Harriet gave a brief speech praising the donors. Clayton noticed she avoided his name, a sign she wasn't quite ready to embrace their reconciliation publicly. Fine, he thought. I didn't come to make her comfortable. By the time the event wound down, Heidi's feet hurt from the heels, and Clayton's patience for high society was spent. They gathered their coats. A few well-meaning acquaintances approached, offering guarded pleasantries, praising Clayton's engineering work. Some extended veiled compliments to Heidi, still unsure how to categorize her. She handled it all with poise. Outside, the valets lined up cars. Harriet stood near the exit, bidding farewell to important guests. She caught Clayton's eye, forced another polite smile. He returned a curt nod. No words passed, nothing more needed to be said. He led Heidi to his car, exhaling relief the moment they pulled away from the mansion's grand driveway. Back at his condo, they fell onto the couch, laughing in shared exhaustion. Heidi kicked off her heels, massaging her sore arches. That was quite the show. Clayton snorted. To think Harriet called it an olive branch. More like a performance to salvage her image. Heidi nodded, eyes drifting. But you survived, faced her on your terms. He let out a breath, tension draining. Yeah, and it felt oddly liberating, like telling them, your power over me is gone. He reached for Heidi's hand. Thanks for standing by me tonight. She smiled softly, leaning in. Always. Their lips met in a tender kiss, relief and closeness washing over them. Later, as they changed into more comfortable clothes, they talked about the future. Heidi hesitantly confessed she might want to move out of her cramped apartment soon, but worried about finances. Clayton found himself offering to help, though they both paused at the implications. I don't want you to think I'm pushing, he murmured. Heidi shook her head. I appreciate it, but maybe I can handle a place on my own. Or, if we're both ready, maybe we consider somewhere together, but not because of Harriet or the office, just because it's right for us. His heart warmed. I'd like that. Let's keep talking about it. Exhausted, they lay entwined on the couch, the city lights casting faint patterns on the ceiling. Clayton felt a calm he hadn't experienced in years, a sense that the old ghosts from Harriet, Valerie, and Miles were losing their grip on him. He still had Emma's calls, but that was a burden he'd chosen to carry with boundaries. Harriet's attempt to use him as a social pawn fell flat. Miles's threats rang hollow. He glanced at Heidi, her lashes fluttering in the dim glow. Gently he brushed hair from her cheek. She stirred, half smiling. We made it, she whispered. He nodded, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Yes, we did. The specter of betrayal still existed in his memories, but the future was becoming clearer. With Heidi's steady presence, the possibility of forging a life not defined by bitterness began to feel real. In the ensuing weeks, life settled into a rhythm that Clayton never thought possible after the devastation of Valerie's betrayal. Days at the engineering firm were busy, culminating in the official awarding of that massive city contract. Clayton's leadership soared in the eyes of his partners and staff. Heidi continued her role efficiently, balancing part-time classes. Sometimes they'd work late, sharing takeout in his office. Their relationship was slowly becoming an open secret. The staff guessed something was going on, but no one openly challenged them Heidi's competence, plus Clayton's respectful handling seemed to quell rumors. Nights often found them together at his condo, cooking simple meals or watching old movies. The swirling drama of Harriet and Miles felt distant, though occasional tidbits reached his ears. Miles was apparently struggling with poor business decisions. Harriet was desperate to maintain her influence. Clayton felt no urge to intervene or rejoice. He simply observed from afar, content to let them reap what they'd sown. Meanwhile, Clayton stayed consistent with monthly phone calls to Emma, each lasting about 15 minutes. He kept the tone light, talking about her school days, her new friends, the cartoon episodes she loved. Occasionally, she mentioned Jake, who was still too little to grasp the complexities. She no longer called him Daddy, having settled into calling him Clay or Uncle Clay, as Valerie suggested. It stung at first, but also felt more honest. Dr. Alvarez and Miss Beecham occasionally checked in, ensuring these calls served Emma's well-being. The arrangement worked for now. Clayton felt a pang each time they hung up, but it was manageable. He realized he could care for Emma without being fully re-immersed in that old, painful role. Maybe this is growth, he thought, though the bittersweet note lingered. Just when Clayton believed Miles might fade into irrelevance, a letter arrived at RCW. It bore a law firm's name, claiming Miles intended to sue Clayton for defamation and emotional distress, referencing the humiliating public revelations at Harriet's prior party, the slideshow where Clayton exposed the affair. The letter threatened legal action if Clayton didn't issue a formal apology and statement retracting false allegations. Clayton read it twice, disbelief turning to grim amusement. He marched to Warren's office, handing it over. "Look at this nonsense. Miles claims I defamed him when I displayed proof of his affair. Proof that was true." Warren rolled his eyes. "You can't defame someone with factual evidence. Miles is desperate. He's probably drowning in debts or trying to blame you for his ruin." Nicole, looped in on the conversation, advised a firm but clear response. "We stand by all evidence as factual. See you in court if you dare." Clayton agreed. Let him waste his money. The next few days, Miles's lawsuit threat fizzled when Nicole responded with their robust defense. Miles's counsel, after a cursory check, realized there was no case. They withdrew quietly. The fiasco ended with a whimper, but it rattled Clayton slightly, reminding him Miles wasn't beyond cheap retaliation attempts. Heidi voiced her support. "He's cornered, flailing. Don't let it shake you." Clayton nodded, resolving to maintain composure. The chapters of Miles's interference seemed to be closing, albeit with occasional potshots. He felt steadier than ever, especially with Heidi by his side. On a warm spring evening, Clayton and Heidi finished a casual dinner at a bustling diner, ironically the same one where she used to serve tables. Now they sat side by side in a booth, the neon sign casting pinkish light across their plates. Heidi laughed, reminiscing about her waitressing mishaps. "I once spilled a whole pitcher of iced tea on a cranky customer. He nearly exploded." Clayton chuckled. "You've come a long way from that. Now you're a front office star." He paused, reaching for her hand. I've been thinking about our future." Her eyes met his, curiosity and a hint of nerves shining. "Oh?" He exhaled, heart pounding. "You mean a lot to me, Heidi. You gave me hope when I was drowning in betrayal. I don't want to rush, but have you considered moving in with me?" Her cheeks flushed. I have. A few times." She bit her lip. "I just wasn't sure if it was too soon, or if the office would freak out." He squeezed her hand gently. "We're consenting adults, and we're not exactly hiding. If you're comfortable, I want us to share a home. I'm not talking marriage yet unless that's on your mind too. But let's start by building a real life together." Tears glimmered in her eyes, a radiant smile forming. "Yes, I'd love that, but we'll need to talk logistics. Me finishing school, your schedule, the office rumor mill." He smiled back, relief washing over him. "We'll handle it. We handle everything else, right?" She nodded, leaning in to kiss him softly. The diner around them buzzed with normal chatter, yet for Clayton, this felt like a major milestone, a step toward genuine happiness. Within a month, Heidi packed her modest apartment, enlisting help from a couple of her college friends. Clayton borrowed a small truck from a co-worker. The move was relatively quick. Heidi didn't own much. By midday, they hauled the final box into Clayton's condo. Standing amidst a jumble of boxes, Heidi wiped sweat from her brow, beaming. "We did it. I'm officially your roommate." Clayton grinned, arms around her waist. "Feels good, doesn't it?" He pressed a kiss to her temple. She laughed, breathless with excitement. The rest of the day, they arranged her books on shelves, combined kitchen utensils, and joked about who got which side of the closet. By evening, they were exhausted, sprawled on the living room floor with takeout pizza. Heidi glanced around, eyes shining. "This is really happening, Clay. Us." He nodded, heart full. "I never thought I'd trust someone enough to share a home again. But you changed that." She brushed her hand over his cheek. "We're building something new together. No ghosts allowed." He exhaled, feeling a weight lift. For the first time since his marriage collapsed, the condo felt like a genuine home, not just a refuge. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, Clayton's phone buzzed with a message from Valerie. "Emma has a recital at her school next Saturday morning. She asked if you'd come watch. No pressure, but she specifically wants to see you in the audience. Clayton's stomach flipped. Another step deeper into Emma's life. He showed Heidi the message that evening, uncertain. What do you think? Heidi pursed her lips. It's sweet that Emma wants you there. But do you feel ready to attend something so public? Valerie might be there, maybe Harriet, even Miles. He gritted his teeth. I told Emma I'd be a limited presence, but this is an important moment for her. She's 6, right? A school recital is huge in her world. If I skip it, she'll feel abandoned again. Heidi nodded slowly. Then maybe go. You can slip in, watch, slip out. Unless you prefer to have me come for moral support? He considered. That might be complicated for Emma. Let me handle it alone. We can keep it low-key. Heidi agreed, hugging him. You're doing a kind thing for that little girl. Just remember your boundaries. That Saturday, Clayton drove to the elementary school auditorium. He arrived early, wearing casual clothes, heart pounding with nerves. He pictured a crowd of parents filming on phones, excited chatter about their kids. Part of him feared running into Miles. Another part just wanted to see Emma smile. Stepping inside, he spotted Valerie near the front row, alone. She waved him over. No sign of Miles. He approached cautiously, ignoring curious stares from other parents who might recall the scandal. Valerie whispered, "Thank you for coming. Emma will be thrilled." He gave a curt nod, taking a seat one chair away from her. Just here for Emma. Soon, kids shuffled on stage, all wearing paper crowns for a short musical number. He spotted Emma in the second row, scanning the audience. When her eyes landed on Clayton, a beaming grin spread across her face. He felt a lump in his throat, lifting a small wave in return. The recital was a short, adorable performance. Emma sang with gusto, occasionally glancing Clayton's way, pride lighting her features. Afterward, parents flooded the stage area, snapping pictures. Emma bounded over, hugging him fiercely. "You came!" she cried, eyes shining. He knelt to her level, ruffling her hair. "Of course, you sang beautifully!" She giggled, launching into a breathless retelling of all the practice sessions. Jake lurked nearby, more interested in a balloon than the performance. Valerie hovered, letting Emma chatter. The moment ended swiftly, as teachers ushered families out. Clayton lingered a bit, promising Emma he'd call soon. She waved goodbye, brimming with excitement. Outside, he caught a glimpse of Harriet near the parking lot, but she kept her distance, possibly respecting Emma's moment. Or maybe avoiding confrontation. He exhaled, a mix of relief and tenderness filling him as he drove away. Despite the tangle of emotions, seeing Emma so happy validated his choice. Late that night, he and Heidi cuddled on the couch, his head resting against hers. He told her about the recital, how Emma's joy radiated. Heidi smiled softly. You made her day. Must feel good. He nodded, eyes drifting shut. It does. Surreal, but good. I'm not her father, yet I'm not a stranger. I guess we're forging a new shape of family. Heidi squeezed his hand. Life rarely fits neat labels, as long as you and Emma find a balance that doesn't hurt you. He smiled wearily. I think we can, and if Miles or Harriet push, I'll hold my ground. Heidi murmured agreement, pressing a soft kiss to his temple. Their living room was calm, a haven from the chaos that once defined his every day. The old bitterness toward Valerie, Harriet, and Miles had dulled, overshadowed by new connections and a quiet acceptance of the past's unchangeable truths. The final weeks of spring saw Clayton and Heidi settling into cohabitation with surprising ease. She laughed at his attempts to cook elaborate meals. He teased her about color-coding her textbooks across the living room shelves. They navigated occasional bumps like office rumors or late-night phone calls from Emma, but overall peace reigned. In a short conversation with Dr. Alvarez, Clayton reflected on his journey. I'm not the man I was a year ago, haunted, angry. I still feel pangs, but it doesn't drown me. Dr. Alvarez congratulated him on forging new patterns, reminding him healing was ongoing. Harriet receded into polite neutrality, her soiree fiasco overshadowed by new social dramas. Miles apparently sank deeper into financial ruin. Valerie stayed out of Clayton's way, focusing on the kids. Emma occasionally asked if Miss Heidi was his friend, to which Clayton responded with a gentle yes, leaving details for the future. One evening on the condo balcony, city lights sparkling, Heidi rested her head on Clayton's shoulder, voicing a quiet question. "Do you ever see marriage in your future again?" He paused, a slow smile forming. "I do, eventually, if that's something we both want." She turned her gaze up, eyes alight with a hopeful glimmer. "Then we can explore that path in time." In the hush of that moment, Clayton felt an unspoken promise he was truly free from the old betrayal, forging a new life with a woman who cherished honesty and warmth. The echoes of the cheating wife and her vengeful boss would always be part of his story, but it no longer defined him. He was a survivor, an engineer building not just structures, but a future on stronger foundations, love, trust, and the quiet grace of second chances. Hey, listeners of Temptress Cheating Tales!